Now, a lot of us already know about some of the iconic classic Xbox Easter eggs that existed from back in the day. Things like holding down the Y and X button to allow for full-screen music visualization to pop up when listening to CDs. The newer discovered Timmy Easter egg where you copy and pasted a new soundtrack with the name Timmy and 26 Ys in it would give you a new option in the settings system information section where you would get Xbox dashboard credits. And of course, the infamous weird voice transmission the OG Xbox dashboard used to have if you left your Xbox on for too long, and some weird transmission would come, which scared a ton of people back in the day. But what about the Xbox 360, the follow-up console? Well, today we wanted to do a full-on deep dive exploring everything Xbox 360, whether it was games that released on the 360 to little secrets Microsoft themselves hid in some of the iconic games that released on the system as well. Yes, this video is going to be a deep dive covering a lot. Check out the chapters down below if you want to jump to something specific, or kick back and enjoy some Xbox 360 nostalgia as we look at some of the cool little things that were hidden along the way. Do you guys remember Xbox 360 avatars? These were surprisingly a big deal back in the day. This was how you presented yourself to other people. This is how other people saw you. And while it was kind of goofy when they introduced this, they were trying to compete directly with the Nintendo Mii. In a weird way, when you would see the character pop up in some indie game or something like that, they were kind of charming, and eventually people would invest a lot of time into the way their characters looked, or they would purchase cosmetics from the Microsoft store for their avatar. It was a whole thing for a while, and of course there were some secrets in there as well. For instance, if you were in the avatar editor and you kept your cursor highlighted over the hairstyles, after a little while the game will play like a little animation looking thing, and boom, you would have special unnatural hair colors selectable that you could now put on. And not everyone knew about this Easter egg, so you could kind of flex your cool hairstyle that other people couldn't get if you were able to, figure this one out on your own, or read it online, or have a friend tell you. Not too many people remember the game Bulletstorm that released, but there are a couple of interesting things here. Like in the prologue level on the ship, the first door has these 3 red rings, which is probably a reference to the Xbox 360's infamous red ring of death that plagued so many Xbox 360 owners back in the day. Maybe they can use the towel trick on the door. Also, later in the game, there's this table here that has a controller for the Duke hologram. Kind of neat. Do you guys remember Minecraft on the Xbox 360? What a wild time that was. Back in the day, Minecraft had its own build that was different from the PC builds of Minecraft that released specifically for the Xbox 360, and with that, the version of the game was a little bit different than what PC players had experienced. Sure, Minecraft Xbox 360 was an older version of Minecraft, but finally, Xbox players could stop playing Castle Miner Z and play the real thing. Nonetheless, a lot of us did experience some of our first Minecraft adventures in the little tutorial world that was set up for Minecraft, and in that tutorial world, there were some hidden secrets that a lot of players ended up finding over the years. For instance, if you head to the back castle here, you'll find this little underwater tunnel, and by accessing this tunnel in the back right of the castle and swimming through the tunnel to the point where you almost drown, you'll find a secret chest, and in that chest, there is a full diamond set of armor waiting for players. But that wasn't the only little secret found in the Minecraft Xbox 360 version's tutorial. There were a couple other little things, like there was a secret nether portal that you could find inside the Minecraft sign, where there were these levers on the side that opened up hidden doors. And these next ones might not be as interesting nowadays, but back in the day, they were pretty big finds. But also in the tutorial world, there was a second town that you could visit way before the days where villagers would come and have their own towns already set up. So this was like a big find. You would just have to travel east of the spawn and make your way over a wall and you could discover it. There was a lighthouse to the northeast section of the river, and this little X marks the spot type area over in the fields biome. Do you guys remember the arcade game Castle Crashers, which came out on the Xbox 360 back in the day? That was a really, really big deal. And that game, not only being a pretty full-fledged game for an arcade game, it also had some little secrets hidden in the game as well. Like, for instance, on the level Alien Ship at the beginning of the level, after you destroy the panel that controls the laser beams of the cell, if the player walks to the left, you can find the bodies of some of the developers just chilling in this cryo liquid tube or something like that. Inside of the level Industrial Castle, there's this area where there's like several cannons blasting green energy at the player. And over here you can see 3 fencers in front of this like dark silhouette of the factory, and then the orange and yellow stripes pop up. And this is a clear nod to the original Newgrounds logo, which is of course where Behemoth Games, the developers behind this game, originally got some of their original traction and start. To make this Easter egg even more on the nose, there's literally like a Tankman character enemy here that's a tank, which obviously resembles the logo. Also, at the end of the fight with Cyclops, when he runs into this like fiery death pit, you'll see as he's sinking down, he puts his thumb up in the air, which is a reference obviously to Terminator 2, where remember the Terminator like gives the thumbs up as he sinks in the lava. This is something that's been played on in a lot of other games over the years, like Doom has done it as well, and it's just something kind of fun. That's really just scratching the surface when it comes to things in Castle Crashers. If you look at the map overworld, there's so many little Easter eggs hidden away here that the developers like slid in there as little inside jokes, and even that whole alien ship level has a ton of references to the game Alien Hominid, which was one of Behemoth Games' first big releases. So it's always been really cool to see these things kind of come full circle. Perfect Dark Zero was one of the first games released on the Xbox 360 and was a really big deal. This was a first-person shooter game on the Xbox 360 in 2005, and this is something I didn't know about until very recently, but in the final boss fight of the campaign, if you get killed by the boss, is that boss hitting the gritty? This is 2005, and we are literally getting emoted on in Perfect Dark Zero. This game was way ahead of its time. To be fair, he does do some other dances if you just sit there watching him after you've lost, but I mean, the disrespect is insane. I tried to figure out why they would program a unique animation onto the boss just for when you die. Like, that doesn't seem like a normal thing a lot of developers would do, but my theory right now is that there was this like really interesting dance club level earlier on in the campaign, and they weren't the best dancers, but I wonder if they made a bunch of dance animations, and then as a little secret, they decided to reuse those animations and throw them on the boss if you end up getting defeated by him in that final fight. That's not the only hidden thing Perfect Dark has had over the years. Also in Perfect Dark Zero, if you shoot Jonathan's hands, at some point he'll yell this line: "Can't play Xbox anymore." In both Perfect Dark Zero and Perfect Dark, Jonathan was kind of an annoying character, so it seems only right here. Also, in the multiplayer level Plaza, you go up these stairs, you can see a little art gallery here with a bunch of Ultimate Games art on display, and this is an homage to the early days of Rare, way back when they were getting their start in the gaming industry, before they were like known as the Rare that they would become through the N64 era, onwards into whatever Xbox wanted them to work on. Now, similarly, Perfect Dark, the original game, which first released on the Nintendo 64, would see a release over on the Xbox 360 in an updated version. So while some of these Easter eggs we're going to talk about real quick did originally appear on the N64, some players who experienced Perfect Dark for the first time on the Xbox 360 might remember these ones as well. Like, for instance, the hidden blocks of cheese on various campaign levels. Pretty much every single campaign level, more or less, has a block of cheese or a slice of cheese just hidden somewhere in the level.
This is the actual reason for it. When I was working with Ross Burry, he was editing the President's plane on that level, and he had made some bit of the plane, some doohickey, and I went up to him in that amusing way and I went, "See that? Looks like I've made a slice of cheese, you know, the actual wedge of cheese." So in every level he went into, subsequently when he edited it, he put a wedge of cheese in it, and that is his signature. So every level Ross went into where he edited it, there's a piece of cheese hidden somewhere in it. That's the reason.
Similarly, in one of the multiplayer levels, there's this weird question mark crate that nobody was able to ever find the answers as to why this was here. Some people think it's like an homage to Mario back in the N64 days, but I don't know, I'm not sold on that. And then there were also these like secret passcodes that were sprinkled throughout the Perfect Dark game that never actually had a place where you would import the username and passwords into. One of them spells out the word like Ozymandias, but we don't know what we're supposed to do with it. There's speculation there was supposed to be a big tie-in on the Perfect Dark website back in the day, but that never actually worked. The username and password, there was nowhere to log into, so it's just a mystery that still sits with Perfect Dark all these years later. Okay, now throughout this video, we are going to visit the main Saints Row games that also released on the Xbox 360 360. I mean, the original Saints Row game was an Xbox 360 exclusive. But there's one thing we need to reference from a later Saints Row game to make more of this make some sense. But in Saints Row 3, the character Kinsey has a little bit of dialogue with Josh talking about a 31 theory, which essentially suggests that everything imported to the universe is always connected back to the number 31, which is a direct reference to an ongoing Easter egg that had been already existing in the Saints Row franchise for quite some time. So going back to Saints Row 1, here are just some examples of 31 popping up. For instance, Tanya's code she types in for the King penthouse is 3131. There's 31 achievements in Saints Row 1. Just keep this one in mind because it will come up again in later Saints Row games. Also, through the course of the first Saints Row games, there's a couple of interesting homies that you could unlock. Some of them were just completed when you did a certain quest or certain sets of levels. You would unlock characters that you could call upon to help you out. But one is actually pretty well hidden, which is Chicken Ned. Now, he's technically not an unlockable character, but if you can find his phone number on like the side of a strip club, you can actually call the number and Chicken Ned will join you as a homie. Also in Saints Row 1, there's a secret stash you can access if you enter a couple of cheats into your phone first, then break into a clothing store, enter a certain code into the safe lock, then exit out the same back entrance, and you get a little developer reference here for the secret stash that you discovered. Your body will then light on fire and you will have super strength, allowing you to like punch vehicles in the air. It's pretty incredible. There's also this Easter egg that definitely wouldn't be put into games nowadays, but this video wouldn't be complete if we didn't show it because it is one from back in the day. We're just gonna play this one out. And then over here by this truck, there's a small nod to TWA Broadcasting, which is the name of the internet cafe throughout the GTA series. But in the Saints Row games, the @ sign is in the font that GTA uses. Obviously, a little nod to another game series that is massively popular that's in the same genre. Now, of course, we can't do a video talking about the Xbox 360 days Easter eggs without mentioning Call of Duty. And we just did a massive video a few weeks ago on every Call of Duty Easter egg across the whole series, but for this video we will just mention some of our favorites from every Call of Duty game. But if you want more, make sure you check out that video after this video. We'll start with Call of Duty 2 and Call of Duty 3, which were the first Call of Duty games on the Xbox 360, and then we'll circle back around later on in this video and talk about some of the other Call of Duties throughout the Xbox 360's life. One cool thing about Call of Duty 2 and Call of Duty 3 is that if you look closely at the names of some of the extra soldiers that are on your side, they might actually share some similarities with the names of developers found in the credits. This is an ongoing trend that's been in most Call of Duty games, where developers will have their last name hidden as a possible character that might just show up on the battlefield with you, but it's a pretty cool thing that Call of Duty started doing. Also in Call of Duty 2, in the training tutorial level, if you refuse to shoot the teddy bear when ordered to, and you like shoot the bottles or just don't shoot the teddy bear, everyone will open fire on you, all because you didn't shoot a teddy bear. Also, an Easter egg we missed from our super video on Call of Duty 3, on the Xbox 360 exclusive DLC map Ironclad, there is the name Juliana on the boat, which is a reference to the developer James McCord, who designed this map's then girlfriend at the time. There's also a secret message hidden somewhere on this map that has still been undiscovered to this day. We did a whole deep dive documentary style video on that, and we talked to Jason McCord himself. We're still looking for it, but it's been a wild ride trying to figure that out. But now I think it's the right time to take a closer look at Halo 3. This is one of the most iconic games of the entire Xbox 360's life, easily, and had some of the most unique Easter eggs in gaming history. Like, for instance, on the first mission of the game, Sierra 117, there's these secret, like, monkey men that are hidden around the map. They might be developer Marcus Leto's face pasted on them, but if you take a closer look, they have a little family here. And they're also in some other obscure parts of the map that are harder to see, but you can see them pretty clearly in the Jackal sniper area. On the second level of the campaign, there's a pretty great Rooster Teeth reference, or Rooster Teeth Easter egg, where if you head down the main tunnel earlier than you're supposed to, you'll see a Marine locked out of like this area that he's trying to get into. He doesn't know the secret code, and this is voiced by people from Rooster Teeth, but also the dialogue for this one changes based on the difficulty that you're playing on.
Hey, open up!
Password, please!
You gotta be kidding me, what password?
The password so we don't open the door for Bruce.
Do I sound like a brute to you?
Well, you could be held prisoner by brutes.
If I was held prisoner by brutes and knew the password, then the brutes could just force me to tell you the password and you'd open the door for them.
Okay, well now I'm definitely not gonna open the door.
But we need ammo!
Well, why don't you go ask your brute buddies then?
Open up!
Password.
What?
Need the password.
You gotta be kidding me. What password?
Password. They gave it out at the staff meeting 15 minutes ago.
Meeting? What meeting? I was out here.
Not supposed to let anyone in without it.
If the staff meeting just ended, no one outside is gonna know the freaking password. Now open up! We need ammo and the chief is out here.
Does he know the password?
He wasn't at the meeting either!
Hey! Open up!
What's the password?
Password? Oh man, I forgot.
Forgot what?
I forgot the password.
See, that was almost right. See, the password begins with I forgot, but ends differently. Try again.
No, I mean, I forgot the password.
Okay, see, you got it wrong again. See, you said the same thing as last time.
I'm being serious. I don't know the password.
No. See, you changed the first part. See, that part was the right part. See, now you got the whole thing wrong.
No, I forgot what the password is, and I just need you to open the door.
All right, come on, man. Now you're just guessing.
Also, in the main room where you start out on this level, if you listen closely and wait long enough, these servers will start playing the Halo theme, but in server pitch form. It's pretty cool. And then there was another Easter egg that wasn't discovered for a very, very long time, but if you were playing on the original Xbox 360 and you were not connected to Xbox Live, but the date was set to December 25th, if you loaded up Halo 3, started a campaign mission, hold down both thumbsticks, you'll see a view of this Halo ring, and you can pan out and a secret message wishing someone named Lauren a happy birthday. This is apparently the wife of Bungie programmer Adrian Perez, and it's pretty neat, especially because as a fellow Christmas birthday haver, sometimes your birthday gets kind of overlooked, and it's cool to see something specifically set to Christmas. The famous Halo song Siege of Madrigal. This is a Bungie song that's appeared in various Bungie games over the years, and it also shows up here as well. Sometimes it's a little hard to hear with all the noise going on in the background, but it is a cool Easter egg, so here's a short clip of that. Now, if you fly over to the other side of the same structure, there is a secret message that some of the developers left, specifically referencing Marty O'Donnell, who did the music and sound design for the main Halo games across the trilogy and Bungie's run with Halo.
I am a monument to all Marty's sins. LOLOLOLO. JNC Paul, weren't you totally fired? Happy Easter, Marty.
Besides the talk of all of the skulls that are hidden in the Halo campaign, there are terminals as well that start showing up once the player reaches the Ark, so you can find a couple of them in various places. There are 3 on the Ark, 3 on the Covenant, and 1 on Halo. Also on the campaign level, the Ark, if you're sneaky enough, you can find this brute doing something. Also, if you listen very closely to the Halo 3 soundtrack, specifically the song titled Black Tower, there is some weird rumbling noises that kind of go on in the song, and it sounds super spooky. But if you take the song and play it backwards, you'll find that it actually is a secret message that is reversed. Take a listen to this. Also, in Halo 3, if you pay close attention to the tires on the Warthog, you will see that they say Puma on them, which is a reference to the Red vs. Blue series.
I think it looks more like a Puma.
What in Sam hell is a Puma?
You mean like the shoe company? No, like a Puma. It's a big cat.
Also, on the campaign level, the Storm, there is this one Marine that's here just kind of freaking out. This is a trend in every mainline Halo game that was made by Bungie, at least, where there would be some Marine that's just not having a good day.
I can see it crawling, sliding around beneath their skin. Oh.
There's even more though when it comes to Halo 3. For instance, a few years back, there was a discovery that at a very specific time, Christmas Day to be exact, if you stayed on the main menu screen long enough, eventually a happy birthday Lauren message would pop up on the screen, which is really cool because Christmas birthdays normally don't get a whole lot of attention. As a fellow Christmas birthday, I think this is a cool Easter egg that they hid in the game. So, you know, good on the Bungie person who hid the happy birthday Lauren message here. Now, if you load up on the multiplayer map Standoff, there are a couple of really interesting things on this multiplayer map. Firstly, if you look at the satellite way in the distance with a sniper scope, you can see what looks to be a person just standing up here. This is actually an image of Travis Brady, who was a Bungie employee, who was a 3D artist, and he's just like chilling out here. And then if you pan around and take a closer look at the moon up in the sky, you can see a face kind of in the bottom right corner. It's hard to make out at first, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. And this is actually the face of Chris Carney, who also was a Bungie employee at the time. These, of course, are some of my favorite like classic Halo 3 Easter eggs from the multiplayer side of things. Another one is on the level High Ground. If you go inside this like little bunker, you'll see all these little portable computers, and there is a radio here. And usually if you stand around long enough, you'll start hearing different like Morse code playing out and some other static noises. It even seems to maybe resemble the song from Halo Combat Evolved, Under Cover of Night, or just some other Halo songs. It's like a little radio presentation, just kind of like a neat little thing to listen to. And later on in the MCC version of Halo, which isn't technically an Xbox 360 game, they added achievements associated to just like listening to these songs. While we will get into some of the newer Easter eggs that were added in Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary in this video, because that is an Xbox 360 era game, there is an interesting Halo 3 Easter egg that refers to the original Combat Evolved, which was a lost calico cat named Jonesy from Halo 1. This was a pretty chill and funny Easter egg, but a reference to the Aliens series, as there was a cat in those movies named Jonesy, which were, you know, kind of low-key the best character in those films. You know, that cat could still be on the Pillar of Autumn, for all we know, just hanging out. Now, we did talk a little bit about the skulls that were hidden in the campaign side of things, but there also were skulls hidden in DLC multiplayer maps that would come out later on. There were 6 hidden skulls to be exact, all in different locations, kind of tucked away. Kind of interesting to find. So you can find the one right up here on Assembly. Then there's this one over here on Heretic. Then on the multiplayer map Orbital, if you go to the elevator shaft, you can find it tucked away up here. Longshore had its skull hidden like behind these pipes kind of over the water. Citadel is the most confusing one for me to find always because of how symmetrical this map looks, but if you kind of like look up in the lights, you'll eventually find it tucked away up here. And then the most challenging and technical skull to get is the one on Sandtrap, which is like way out of bounds, and essentially you have to either go into Forge mode and build like some sort of long tunnel to get all the way out to where the skull is to obtain it, or you can do an overload glitch where you throw a bunch of trip mines down and it overloads the map once the grid disappears, and then you can go like drive out there and pick up the skull. Sometimes it doesn't load and you have to start a new round, so it's best to like do it in Forge, put a teleporter down and then go and get it. But it is an interesting thing that was just like hidden across these. Then if you had all of the skulls, you would get an extra achievement called Vidmaster Brain Pain, which was like one of the steps that you had to do back in the day if you wanted to get the Recon helmet, which was like do all of these special Vidmaster achievements, which were all relatively challenging in their own right. If you pay attention to the eyes of Franck, the fish on the multiplayer map Longshore, you'll see that the eyes slowly and steadily change over the course of a match. It's actually a little unsettling if you don't realize what's happening until you pay attention to it. But yeah, something kind of neat. That's similar to what goes on the map Isolation, where the flood will slowly spread over the first couple of minutes of the game, making the grass more contaminated with the flood infection spores rather than what it starts out with at the beginning of the match. So depending on what day you're playing Halo 3 on the map Valhalla, there will be writing on the wall here that can change depending on if it's like a special holiday or just like a certain day that Bungie had picked for something neat to pop up here. A lot of inside jokes that they threw here. It's kind of a fun thing. There's a similar thing on Longshore where the menu at this little like fish stand will change based also on if there is a special special day marked associated with when you're playing to what loads up here. Also, there's some more text on the wall that changes also based on which day it is, kind of hidden away on this side angle, making it hard to see, but if you're looking for it, you can definitely see it, and this suck it Franck message will change periodically based on what day it is. Weirdly enough, the camera on Longshore randomly will follow you around. I don't know if that's an Easter egg, but I always thought that that was interesting, kind of like how the giant eyeball looking thing on Cold Storage follows you around as well. This next one's a classic, but a good one. On Sandtrap, if you managed to flip the elephant, you would get this text on the screen, just like, how did you do this? I mean, so many of us did this, partially because of the incentive of having the text pop up on the screen. But still, it was always funny to see that there was like a little nod at the fact that flipping an elephant shouldn't be that easy, but yet you did it here. There's been a couple of references to hippos across Halo, like in Halo 2, there was like the one that was up in that building. But in Halo 3, the hippo trend continues, and you can find a little hippo in the trash pile on the multiplayer map Foundry. If you clear all the boxes out and just like look at the bear map, you could just see it on the ground here. And also on the Halo 3 shotgun, there is a little like hippo on there as well. If you're playing on the multiplayer map Snowbound and you head into the tunnel near the active camo, you can actually find a Canadian $1 coin buried in the snow, kind of just frozen. It's a Lucky Looney, which is what the coin is called. Apparently, there's like a deeper meaning to this, where there's like a custom in Canada where you bury a coin underneath the ice during an ice hockey or curling event in like the Olympics, or I guess Canadian national ice hockey. So yeah, this is something kind of interesting, though you can't see it on split screen, only on regular full screen. Also, if you load up on the multiplayer level, The Pit, you can actually go over to this little box here and hit it with the melee button. It'll break open. If you look at the back of it, there's a small Windows XP logo just hanging out here. There's also one of these on the multiplayer map Blackout near the basketball hoop that we've all tried to play basketball in some way or another. So that's kind of a little cool nod, I guess. Windows XP, what a time to be alive.
Gears of War is also a classic Xbox 360 franchise, with the first game releasing in November 2006. There's a couple of hidden little Easter eggs and details in this game that are kind of interesting. The first one is a reference to Red vs. Blue with the achievement Is It a Spider? We have to kill 100 enemies in a ranked match with grenade tags. This is a reference to this classic Red vs. Blue scene you're about to see.
What the f? What? What is that thing? What thing? There's something on your head. What? Is it a spider? Get it off! No, it's not a spider. It's like a blue thing. What? Like a blue spider? Get it off! It's not a spider. Now, calm down. It's some kind of fuzzy pulsating thing. That doesn't sound much better than a spider.
Another Easter egg hidden in an achievement is the My Love for You is Like a Truck Easter egg, for which you have to defeat a berserker on hardcore difficulty. This is a reference to Kevin Smith's first directorial film called Clerks from 1994, where one of the characters is asked to make up a metal song on the spot, I think, and the line he says is, "My love is like a truck, berserker." To be honest, such a weird and obscure reference, but I guess in 2006 this movie was only 12 years old. I don't even know if anyone today knows the movie Clerks. On Act 2, Chapter 6, when you arrive at the Chaps gas station, you can see the sign light up at the top of the gas station. Now if you shoot this boarded up window in the back and apply like a certain amount of damage to it, some of the sign will turn off and it'll be the name Gap with a heart. Gap being one of the developer's girlfriends at the time, and you know, they put in this little Easter egg for her. In Act 4, Chapter 1, you can find this statue in the middle of this courtyard and the word hope is spelled out and the O is like a cog, like, you know, like the Gears of War cog. I guess, cog? I hope I'm saying it right. Anyways, now you can shoot the gear of the hope sign and it'll actually fall down. Apparently you can also get kills with it, or it can crush you if you stand on it. Then later, when you get to Act 5, Chapter 2 with the Berserker fight, when the Berserker shows up at the back of the train, they'll break like these pallets and a bunch of boxes start flying, and if you make your way back and you look at the boxes close up, you'll actually see that they're Gears of War themed cereal called Gears Crunch. It also says you can win a tiny pillow. So I guess, you know, maybe you'll get a tiny pillow if you send in the coupon on the cereal box. But it's always so much work. You have to like cut it out of the box and then, you know, get your mom to drive you to the mail place and then mail it. And I guess you gotta find a stamp. I never did this. On the multiplayer map Rooftops and the campaign level as well, I think, if you throw a smoke grenade into this window, you can actually see this guy, like this dead guy is sitting on a toilet, and you'll see the outline of it. Some people use like the laser that comes from the sky, I forgot the name, to see like the outline, but I think the smoke grenade version works the best. When Gears of War Ultimate Edition came out, they actually put the guy back on the toilet, but he's in a different window now, and you can't shoot him with the laser anymore, but you can clearly see him now. So they kind of did a callback later later to this classic Xbox 360 Easter egg, which I think is pretty cool.
Now, besides the release of Halo 3, one of the biggest and most definitive game releases that started kicking off the Xbox 360 era of just dominating gaming in an online console sense was Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, the first Call of Duty game to bring things into the modern era, and with that, there were some interesting things hidden away in these games that were kind of iconic for its time. On the campaign level, the coup at the very beginning when you're being brought to the vehicle, you'll see these signs up here that are in Arabic, but if you actually translate them directly, they translate to Infinity Ward, the name of the developer that made Call of Duty 4. Did you guys know at the end of Call of Duty 4, there was a Call of Duty Modern Warfare rap? This is actually crazy that this exists.
Hidden the mind in time, you'll find my lines, combining the twine, underline, rhyme, divine, no high.
Also, Call of Duty kind of picked up the trend and Easter egg that had been ongoing at this point in the Call of Duty franchise of hiding teddy bears across various campaign levels and multiplayer levels. This shows up in a lot of Call of Duty games down the road, but Call of Duty 4 really stepped it up as there are teddy bears all over the place. If you've seen the movie War Games, you might recognize this computer here, which actually shows up in the campaign level No Fighting in the War Room, as the computer was hidden here as a little nod to that movie. And then on the campaign level Crew Expendable, there are quotes from the movie Aliens.
I like to keep this for close encounters.
I'd like to keep this handy for close encounters.
We're on our way out. On your feet, soldier. We are leaving. We are leaving.
Also in that first level, if you fail to make the jump, the text on the screen will say no one makes it on the first jump, which is a reference to the movie Matrix. There's a lot of movie references actually in Call of Duty 4. We won't go into all of them, but one of my favorite ones is on Mile High Club when we get the line, "Don't call me Shirley," which is a reference to the movie Airplane.
We're going deep and we're going hard.
Surely you can't be serious.
I'm serious, and don't call me Shirley.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Over on the multiplayer map Shipment, you can actually see different symbols referencing Call of Duty 4 and Infinity Ward. Then if we load up on the DLC map Chinatown, this map is actually a remake of the classic map Carrington, which some of you might remember if you're an OG Call of Duty player. There are secret teddy bears hidden on this multiplayer map as well, even one inside of a TV. Also, we talked about that earlier level, the coup, where you're like going in that car and you're a prisoner and whatnot. You can actually see a drawing of the lead developer Jason West as graffiti on one of the walls while you're driving past. If you load on the multiplayer map Showdown and you find this chicken over here, it's in this like secret spot, but it's kind of just dancing, chilling out, having a good time. Over on the multiplayer map Backlot, you can find another Easter egg of the Infinity Ward logo over here. And as with the common trend across Call of Duty games, a lot of the developers are names of the random extra soldiers, and you can see a Marine named Roysowicz on the Bog, which is one of the main design developers who worked on Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare and worked on later Call of Duty games as well. Yeah, Call of Duty 4 definitely had some interesting things with it. Okay, now I was unsure how I should actually put this part into the video, but we should do a little dedicated section to just the Willhelm Scream showing up in various games. So let's just like go through these really quickly. First, we have Red Faction Guerrilla. 2009's Bionic Commando did it. I do remember laughing when I heard it in Dante's Inferno for the first time. Of course, 2013's Deadpool had to have it as well. It's in Deus Ex Human Revolution. It's in the game Enslaved Odyssey of the West. It even shows up in Halo Reach, something I didn't even know about until we were working on this video.
6!
It's also in Halo Wars. It was in 2011's Homefront. We won't talk about every single Star Wars game entry that has a Willhelm Scream in it because we'll be here all day. It's in Mass Effect 2. It's in Rainbow Six Vegas 2, Red Dead Redemption, Saints Row 2. It's also in Saints Row the Third.
Your prize money goes up.
It also shows up in the 2009 game Wet. And it even shows up in Assassin's Creed 3. This is just like a short list of some of the many appearances of the Willhelm Scream. Left 4 Dead 1 and Left 4 Dead 2 both released nearby each other, surprisingly, with Left 4 Dead 1 releasing in 2008 and a year later Left 4 Dead 2 releasing, and these games had quite a few Easter eggs that were pretty iconic and interesting for its time. Like, for instance, in Left 4 Dead 1, you can find multiple cereal boxes that reference TF2, another game released by Valve. In the campaign No Mercy, when you're riding in the elevator going up, you end up stopping on the 28th floor, which is likely a reference to the film movies 28 Days Later or 28 Hours Later, either one of them. Also in No Mercy, there's this billboard that has this orange box Easter egg, probably a reference to the orange box. There's also this cool Easter egg from the campaign Death Toll, where if you look down in the bottom area here, you can see this room that's like splattered with blood and gults, and there's a lawnmower on the floor, which is an homage to the movie Dead Alive. And then of course, in some of the safe rooms, you'll see like writing on the walls, and there's always some funny things that you can find along the way if you pay attention to them. So next time you play through Left 4 Dead, for old time's sake, pay attention to what you see on the walls in these rooms. Left 4 Dead 2 steps things up a bit with even more Easter eggs. Like, for instance, you can see this truck over here and it reads Disease Emergency Assessment Dispatch, which when you abbreviate it spells dead. This grocery store is called Save for Less. I think this is a funny nod to Left 4 Dead. If you pay attention to some of the different like garbage and trash that's like scattered throughout levels, you might notice that some characters from Team Fortress 2 are illustrated on these objects. There was a secret gnome on Dark Carnival that you can get an achievement for carrying for a little portion of the game, which is like a recurring Easter egg, I guess, across certain Valve games. Also, during the big finale of Dark Carnival, if you go near the microphone as Coach or Ellis in the big finale, they might start singing into it.
Every lady's crazy when her daddy's not around. Da, na, 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 na.
Also on Hard Rain, when you get to the safe house where you collect the fuel, you might see this graffiti here that says it was written by Chet and Eric, which are references to Chet Falzek and Eric Wolpal, who were writers at Valve at the time. Also on that level where you're like defending the mall, there is a chance that you can actually see the zombified version of that race car driver that's like on the big poster, just chilling out over here. It doesn't happen all the time, but there is a chance that it can happen when you're playing. Also on the campaign The Passing, there is a jukebox that's actually working, and you can sort through the different songs that all have like their own little secrets or meanings, or just, you know, pick a track to jam to. Also, if you're on Death Toll and you get to the church, you can see that on the walls in here, every developer or a bunch of developers all have their names referenced on the wall, and their death dates are all from the year that Left 4 Dead 2 released. And then on the junkyard, there's like this shed that you can continuously hit over and over and over again, and if you can crack it open, you can find a little secret developers room here where there's like a computer and more references to other developers who worked on the game. Pretty cool to find developer rooms on Xbox 360 games, and I think it'd be really cool if more games had these nowadays. Another game that came out at the launch of the Xbox 360 was Kameo Elements of Power. It was like an action adventure game that was developed by Rare, the people who made Banjo-Kazooie, Conker, Donkey Kong 64, and so on. This game's often forgotten about in the grand scheme of Xbox 360 games, but it did have a lot of interesting references to Rare's past in game development. While of course in Kameo they couldn't directly reference things that were like Nintendo intellectual properties, they found their way around some interesting things. For instance, there's this house here where you can actually activate the Banjo-Kazooie theme to play in the room, except it's a metal version instead of a banjo version, which sounds pretty cool. Listen to this. There's a skin that heavily resembles Joanna Dark from Perfect Dark Zero, the other game that Rare worked on to launch with the Xbox 360. There's also this skin that might, to a eagle-eyed observer, resemble possibly Mumbo Jumbo from Banjo-Kazooie. I don't know if you guys can see it like I can, but yeah, I see the similarity. And then of course there were a couple other little things that they sprinkled in there as well. There's references to some of the troubled development that this game had, as it originally started as a GameCube project before the whole Microsoft acquisition. Originally, Kameo was supposed to have a sidekick. There's this clever reference hidden inside of a cabinet where it talks about a cube of ice, like the GameCube, and two beetles from a box. And then you have to heat it to 360 degrees and add something called Meepo scales, which would have been the sidekick character originally planned for Kameo that ended up getting cut. And yeah, it was just a simple recipe, but a recipe that kind of co-aligned with some of the development issues that this game initially had in the earlier days before it finally did make it to its release. Let's go ahead and move forward though to Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, which was the much awaited sequel that really wasn't a sequel at all gameplay-wise to Banjo-Tooie. Still, this game had a lot of charm that was found in the first Banjo-Kazooie games, and a lot of references to a ton of different things that Rare had worked on in the past. So let's just like dive into this real quick because there's a lot to unpack. In Log's Video Game Factory, you can actually see references to game sequels that never were planned on being made. You can see quite a few classics here, like Battletoads 2010, Ghosts and Ghoulies 2, Viva Pinata Kart, which would have been awesome. There's even sequels for other games and Banjo-Kazooie there as well for another game, and an Xbox 360 chilling here because of course Banjo was now an Xbox kid. I saw a comment on this video with an Easter egg suggesting that Grunty was secretly behind the scenes working on Kinect Sports, which would be Rare's next game that they would be forced to work on by Microsoft for a while. RIP. There's also this reference to the Xbox 720 or the L-Box 720 as a joke, as everybody obviously thought the next Xbox after the Xbox 360 would for sure be called the Xbox 720 because 360 times 2 is 720. I vividly remember hating it when people would refer to the new Xbox as the Xbox 720. I thought it was the dumbest name. Microsoft would never, ever name a console something as silly as the 720. And then they announced the Xbox One, which was dumber. There is this very clever Easter egg where you can see a Banjo-Kazooie disc spinning around like an Xbox 360 disc, even though this game never actually came out on a disc. But there is like little text in the bottom referencing the fact that Banjo-Kazooie had released 10 years earlier at this point, and then asks the question if anybody will remember Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts 10 years into the future, and even asks people to come back in 2018 if they actually remember the game. A lot of people took this as confirmation there would be a new Banjo-Kazooie game in 2018. That never ended up happening, but maybe 2028 is the real year. We'll get another Banjo game. There's also a disc for Banjo-Tooie and more text talking about the complexities of Banjo-Tooie over Banjo-Kazooie 1. They have it Grabbed by Ghoulies represented over here. We got good old-fashioned Viva Pinata showing up over here. They even have a reference to It's Mr. Pants, a Game Boy Advance game made by Rare, which was the mascot from their website that somehow turned into a game, and that's pretty much what this text says here. And they said they'd be very surprised if they ever made another one because they were surprised they even got to make one in the first place. There's a ton of other Easter eggs referencing their other games throughout Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, like this pile of copies of Grabbed by Ghoulies. The wizard from the game Kameo shows up on this card here. In Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, there's a prototype Xbox from when they first announced the new Xbox at that Microsoft conference where it looked like an actual X. Yeah, you just get to straight up drive that around in this game. Banjo makes a reference to how a long time ago he was in a similar racing situation with a genie and a giant, which is directly referencing the time that he first appeared in Diddy Kong Racing before his game even released as a playable character where you had to help Diddy Kong and friends race. That was a great game. Weird story, great game. Then throughout, there's a ton of references to various bosses, enemies, and other minor characters from different Rare games like Conquer and Banjo-Kazooie, along with locations being referenced and other musical tracks from previous games kind of being incorporated in one way or another here. They have this little section here where they're paying homage to the different types of transformations you were able to do in Banjo-Kazooie 1 and Banjo-Tooie. Fudgehog from Viva Pinata straight up just shows up in this. Under the water, you can see lockers of various developer names being referenced here. Greg Mayles, most notably, known for a lot of the music from the Rare universe. But there are a lot of other names referenced too. There's a leaderboard over here with more names of developers and people who've worked at Rare. What an interesting game with a lot of other things that we probably don't have time to get into, but still, these are the coolest ones I thought that we had to include. Now, does anyone who played Xbox 360 back in the day remember the game Geometry Wars? It was kind of a big deal on the arcade for a minute, but it actually started out as an Easter egg on the original Xbox for Project Gotham Racing. It was just a simple little arcade Easter egg that was hidden in the game, but it spawned off to become its own thing, and Project Gotham Racing 3, the first PGR game to release on the Xbox 360, included this Easter egg once again, this time including Geometry Wars 1 and Geometry Wars 2 as playable games within the game. PGR4, the follow-up game, actually had a really interesting James Bond-related Easter egg that not a lot of people knew about, but PGR4 was known for having a few achievements tied to doing different things like recreating scenes from various movies. One of the achievements was called Secret Agent PGR4 Puzzle Achievement, which essentially required you to recreate a moment from the Bond movie Casino Royale, which wasn't really hard to do. All you had to do was drive the Aston Martin DBS in Las Vegas and park it in front of the Casino Royale building, and bam! Achievement unlocked, but a clever achievement nonetheless. Then going into Saints Row 2, we have more mentions of that special number 31, like this cutscene here from Crowd Control.
No shit. What have you worked on?
Well, let's see. Cock of Cthulhu starring D.P. Lovecrack, Bukkake High School 31 starring Abby Hammerstein.
On the Sons of Samedi campaign side of things, the second to last level, I believe, is called Assault on Precinct 31, which is a reference to the film Assault on Precinct 13, but with the number 31. Gat mentions he was in jail for 2 years and 31 days. There's a hitman target who apparently is an arsonist who's lit 31 different buildings on fire. There's 31 different compliments and taunts available in the game customization options. The news station is called News 13 Stillwater. We know Pierce wears a Stillwater Sharks short sleeve baseball jersey, and look at that jersey number, 13. The number 31 in reverse. Also, if you listen to the TV, there's a commercial for Rusty's Needles, and the announcer will say reasons to shop at Rusty's Needle number 31, the feed dogs. That's one of the bands in Saints Row 2. Yeah, so more uses of the number 31, flipped around sometimes with 13, and of course, a huge thank you to the Saints Row fandom wiki for listing these all out. Of course, some of these could just be coincidental, but when you look at the large, bigger picture, you can see there's obviously a trend of them using these numbers intentionally. Saints Row 2 started this trend of hiding inflatable dolls in random locations, which would be continued through various Saints Row games. For instance, you can find one in this cemetery cavern. Also, there's like a nuke launch room, and you can see one of the floaties over here. I wonder why it's not in a swimming pool. Also, you can find this one in the background of Donnie's garage, and there's one floating in the water by the nuclear waste dump, which is an insane concept at all, that there's a nuclear waste dump in the water. Back when Saints Row was clever. And then by far one of the coolest Easter eggs in Saints Row 2 is the super secret area, which essentially there's this small island that doesn't show up on the map that's past the prison area. You can get over there by driving a boat or flying over there, and it's this little secret island. But as you begin to explore this secret island, there's an even more secret area hidden behind this waterfall. You know, the classic secret Easter egg area behind a waterfall gimmick. I love it when games do it. This area is called the Volition Oasis, which has a statue of the Volition logo, and overall this is just like a cool homage to the developers. But also, then if you take another look, there's some weird sea creatures swimming in a large circle around the area of the super secret area island. So look at that. A lot of things just hidden here, and I really missed the days when games would hide stuff like this. Now, when we're getting footage of us going and finding this secret island, we noticed there were these other islands out there as well. So we decided to drive over there and take a look, and we found like one island that had an arrow just pointing off in the distance. So we decided to head in that direction, and we found another island, and this island had like a little thing on it, and when we stood there, this giant rabbit started coming out of the water. This has been an Easter egg that's been known about for years, but we didn't know about it, and it's a pretty cool little secret hidden all the way out there. One, that 2-hour surprise ends up coming back later on in this video in a relevant way, so sit tight for that. It is interesting, I think at least. Also, in Saints Row 2, if you head up to the North Shore Marina District, there's this mall area, and you can head inside the building, and inside there's like this large glass hallway area, and eventually you'll find this office room that has a bunch of desks and computers, and the wall says the game studio, and it has a big V logo for Volition. Kind of a little secret Easter egg where they kind of put a fictional version of Volition in the game world. There's actually like DLC where you do stuff in this area apparently that I haven't played just yet, and Jason Scott, the studio director, has a picture of himself on the wall here, so that's cool. There's some other clever classic Easter eggs that we found here. There's some interesting developer names found found on cemetery gravestones, something that a lot of video games take advantage of. I mean, it's a cool and clever way to throw your name and hide it in a game. There's a jet in this game called Snipes 57, which is a reference to the movie Passenger 57, where Wesley Snipes plays Passenger 57, so they called it Snipes 57. There are a couple other smaller references to other games, movies, and TV shows like this, and we have a lot to cover in this video, so maybe in the future watch out for a big video where we just deep dive into every single Saints Row Easter egg across the board. But we will still talk about Saints Row 3 and 4 as well in this video, so don't worry. Also, while we're on the topic of Saints Row, if you look at Red Faction Guerrilla, there is a reference back to Saints Row. I mean, there's a couple of them, but one really interesting one where we get to see Shandy from Saints Row 2 with a little bit of an audio line here that we'll play for you right now.
Why is the pain of death more tolerable than the shame of living? How is it we can face a vast unknown? We can't even look our families in the eye.
Crackdown 1 was always a really interesting game to me. It originally got a lot of people's attention because if you picked up Crackdown 1, you could get access to the Halo 3 beta before the game would fully release, and a lot of people picked up the game just for that. And then it turned out the game wasn't half bad either. And there are some interesting Easter eggs in the first entry that are worth noting, specifically the random rubber duckies that are just hidden throughout the game for whatever reason. I mean, that's kind of cool, right? I don't know, some of these ducks are surprisingly powerful. There's also a few references to the film Apocalypse Now and the film Full Metal Jacket. If the player catches on fire, you might hear the quip, "I love the smell of agent" in the morning. And also, if the player attacks like civilians or law enforcement, the announcer might say, "What is your malfunction, agent?" Also, interestingly enough, there's this immigration office over here with the name You Pay, You Stay, which is a wild idea, but somewhat accurate. A few years after we got Crackdown 1, Crackdown 2 would release, and there were a couple of interesting things, like on Agency Island, there was this smokestack that you could only get over there if you like jumped off of a large building or you flew over there in a helicopter. But if you actually go down the smokestack, you end up landing in this large toilet that has a few beach balls and golf balls, and it's like a little cave area, and yeah, giant toilet. Why not? You could even find a rubber ducky here, which is like a reference to the rubber duckies from the first Crackdown game. Also in the Sporties Freak Lair, there's this like fenced off area that is just full of rubber ducks. I don't know what the deal is with Crackdown and rubber ducks, but they seem to show up a lot, and they continue this trend going with Crackdown 2. And then there is a very subtle reference to Ruffian Games, the studio that ended up making Crackdown 1 and Crackdown 2. There is a bat called a Ruffian Club, which is like a melee weapon, and it was like this baseball bat, had blood on it. It had the studio logo on it, and hey, that was something, because obviously the studio ended up getting shut down a little after Crackdown 2, so they kept their legacy alive by hiding something like this in their game series forever. The studio would go on to work on some Kinect games before working alongside Microsoft and 343 Industries on Halo MCC for the Xbox One. We all know how that went, and they started doing some development on Crackdown 3, but they ended up getting acquired by Rockstar Games in 2019 and were absorbed into Rockstar and Take-Two, becoming Rockstar Dundee Studios. That's why we don't hear about them anymore. They also haven't had like a main game release in a long time. Another great game that came out in the Xbox 360 era was Oblivion from the Elder Scrolls series. And there's this one character who's shown up in a couple of different Elder Scrolls games at this point, named Maik the Liar. And his dialogue is always so interesting because while his name is the Liar, oftentimes the things that he is saying is actually truthful, almost breaking the fourth wall sometimes, and like talking about the game itself and other types of things. A lot of inside jokes to things that have happened in the series, and ultimately he's just a pretty neat character.
Mike believes the children are our future, but he doesn't want them ruining all of our fun. Some people want special bows that take too long to load and need special arrows called bolts. Mike thinks they are idiots.
He also does show up in Skyrim as well, once again, so we can maybe hope that he appears in the Elder Scrolls 6 one day into the future, but yeah, here he is in Skyrim.
Mike saw a mud crab the other day. Horrible creatures. Too much magic can be dangerous. Mike once had 2 spells and burned his sweet roll.
Also, over in Oblivion, you can find this small bridge past the mouth of Panther, and underneath the bridge, you'll find the remains of a dead troll, which I think is like reminiscent of like the children's fairy tale. There's a poorly scrawled note on the body that is kind of funny. It says, "Me worst troll ever. Nobody pay bridge toll. Me not scary enough. Me get drunk and kill self troll drown." Whatever that means. R.I.P. the dead troll who couldn't get people to pay the bridge toll. If you look at the posters for the arena in the Imperial City, you can actually see that they are reminiscent to the box art from the original Elder Scrolls Arena game. And yeah, Oblivion really was a gem for its time. Over in Skyrim, there are some other interesting Easter eggs as well. Like, for instance, there's a headless horseman that you can just randomly have a chance of encountering if you're near like one of the main roads while at night. If you follow him long enough, he'll take you over to Hamvir's Rest, and then there's like several skeletons and like this dude you have to fight, and once you fight them all, you get access to a master chest. There is an item known as the Notched Pickaxe, which might be a reference to Minecraft, as the creator of Minecraft's name was Notch, and you use a pickaxe for mining and whatnot, so it's likely that this Notched Pickaxe was named after him. If you go into Endon's house in Markhearth, you can actually see that this back here, all of these items are arranged to maybe look like Pac-Man. Also, circling back to that Troll Bridge Easter egg from Oblivion, there's a similar one over by Hag Rock Redoubt, and there's a bridge with a dead troll underneath. If it's your first time visiting, you'll see two goats meeting up with a third goat at the end of the bridge and then running off together. The Mass Effect series had some interesting Easter eggs along the way as well. The first one releasing all the way back in 2007, but does anyone else remember the old shifty looking cow? It was this cow, and he is shifty. Then over in Mass Effect 2 in Hawk's Vault, you can actually see a few references to the other Dragon Age games, the games that were developed by BioWare as well. Then over in Mass Effect 3, if you go to Mars and you look at these solar panels in the correct order, eventually this little robot dude will roll out and say, "What's up?" Kind of cool. There's also a console that you can continue to interact with, and a soldier will ask you to stop touching it, but if you keep touching it, eventually he gives in a bit and lets you know about it.
Once more, the Solarian Union formally requests that you not touch that. Fine. If you are so enamored of that object, then I suggest you get your own feces analyzer.
There are a few interesting Easter eggs that have popped up from the Assassin's Creed series over the years, starting way back in Assassin's Creed 1 when some people thought that this building structure kind of resembled Optimus Prime from Transformers. I can kind of see it, I guess. There was this interesting Ghosts of the Past type vision that could happen in Assassin's Creed 2, and it was like this vision where the main character could like see his entire family. It's pretty cool, but it can only happen once, so I think this should count as an Easter egg, but I'm not 100% sure if it counts, but I wanted to include it. But that should count too. If that doesn't count, then here's this reference.
Do I know you from somewhere?
Don't you recognize me? It's me, Mario!
In Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, there's this somewhat clever Metal Gear reference with like a cardboard box being a solid hiding place. In Assassin's Creed Revelations, there's this Easter egg where you fight this citizen, and if you defeat him 3 times in a row, he'll be like, "Oh, we'll call it a draw," all right? And that's a reference to Monty Python and the Holy Grail, where the Black Knight challenges King Arthur to a sword fight. After like both of the dude's arms are sliced off, he's like, "Oh, okay, we'll call it a draw." Assassin's Creed 3 actually has one of my favorite Easter eggs in the entire franchise, where for whatever reason, if you like follow a turkey around long enough and then enter the Konami code, which is like the up, up, down, down, left, right, BA button combination, the turkey will start eating, but also prove to be an assassin. Yep. He is technically, canonically an assassin. I don't know if that's how canon works, but nonetheless, we have the assassin turkey here, and I appreciate it. And this next one's not really a secret, but it's still interesting. But in the same Assassin's Creed game, there is like the headless horseman that makes its first appearance in the series here, something that kind of becomes a recurring theme in various Assassin's Creed games in the future. Moving on to Assassin's Creed 4, there's a clever reference here. In the mission Trust is Earned, John Cockram can be heard telling his soldiers to pick up your socks and grab your which is a reference to the scene from Full Metal Jacket. And now we get to the final Assassin's Creed game to release on the Xbox 360, Assassin's Creed Rogue. There's a couple of interesting ones, like once again, the Headless Horseman makes an appearance. There's an Easter egg referencing the Prince of Persia game series, which Prince of Persia was what eventually led to the creation of the Assassin's Creed series. You can see his little figurine over here. But there are multiple missions across Assassin's Creed Rogue with these specific names: The Way the Wind Blows, One Little Victory, Free Will, The Color of Right, Circumstances, Armor and Sword, Scars, Bravado, and Cold Fire, and all of them are names of songs by the band Rush. Bonus points for Caress of Steel, which is the title of a Rush album as well.
Now when it comes to the first Dead Space game from 2008 and the two follow-up games, there's a handful of cool Easter eggs I thought we should include in this video. The very first one that came to mind for me was when you can actually see Isaac's face at the beginning of the first game, before he ends up putting on his helmet for the rest of the game. Also, you can find Schofield tools all over the game. Glenn Schofield was the executive producer of Dead Space 1. In the captain's chair you can find this log that has a bunch of names in it, and all these names are developers that worked on the game. In Dead Space 2 you can find more developers hidden in the observation room, where there's the faces of the UI designers on these test subject screens. Then the main menu had all these secret messages that were written in like the marker language or whatever you call this. I don't actually know the name for this. If you decode these messages, they would say stuff like, "You can't stop what's coming," "Make us whole," or even stuff like, "Welcome back, Nicole Brennan," which is obviously Isaac's deceased girlfriend. Also in Chapter 5, if you die during the Tormentor fight, you can actually see a hand floating in space, and this looks just like the Dead Space 1 cover. Also, there's an advertisement for Skate 3000, which I guess we're getting Skate 4 soon, so I guess we still have a couple to go before we get to 3000. And then in Dead Space 3, if you take the first letter of each of the chapter's names, it spells out "Brother, Moons Are Awake," which actually teased the plot of the Dead Space 3 DLC Awakened. This wasn't the first time they did this though, because in Dead Space 1, if you take all the first letters of the chapters, it spells out "Nicole is dead."
The Bioshock series, interestingly enough, has quite a few Easter eggs, though the first game doesn't have as many Easter eggs as later entries. Though in that first game, if you go to the farmer's market, you can see on the table here what resembles Pac-Man, kind of like inscribed in the wood here. Kind of a clever little reference to that game. There also was an Easter egg that wasn't uncovered until 2018, pretty much 10 years after the game initially released. But if you turn on art captions in the settings, you can actually see a developer message hidden away about Paul Hellquist not doing his job, because there was a debug text message towards him secretly as an Easter egg hidden in the game from where you first encounter Ryan in person, and you can see this little funny nod Easter egg to probably someone's coworker, which is hilarious. Bioshock 2 had some interesting Easter eggs along the way too, like there was the plane wreckage that you can just barely see in the beginning parts of the campaign for Bioshock 2. Then also in Bioshock 2, you can see wrenches scattered throughout the campaign, which is not only a reference to Ken Levine's first big video game project that he worked on with Irrational Games, but the wrench was the Bioshock weapon, essentially, for the main character in the first game. So all the wrenches scattered around in Bioshock 2 is kind of a nod to that, and this is a trend that will continue into Bioshock Infinite with more wrenches just being everywhere. Another interesting thing is that all Bioshock games utilize a secret code somewhere in the game, usually a key code, with the numbers 0451, which is a reference to the book Fahrenheit 451. Bioshock Infinite has some great Easter eggs as well, like for instance, if you head to this section of the game, there's references to the game's own developmental delays that they went through. Elizabeth will be ecstatic when she sees a certain mechanical game called Duke and Dimwit, and mentions that the newest one in the series had been delayed 3 times, much like how Bioshock Infinite dealt with 3 delays. Also in Bioshock Infinite, there's this like cutscene moment where Booker and Elizabeth get teleported inside a Rapture, and you can distantly, way out there in the background, see what appears to be a big daddy that's lifeless, and like a little sister mourning over him. There was like a trend with Bioshock where sometimes baby carriages would have weapons inside of them, which was kind of clever. Also in Bioshock Infinite, in some areas, like what we have here in the Fraternal Order, if you listen to the ambient noise, it sounds, I don't know, kind of like ominous or something. But some players found that if you speed up the song between 800 to 1000%, you can actually hear that it's somewhat of a normal song with singing and acoustic guitar being hearable here. Take a listen to this. Do some of you guys remember Guitar Hero 3? The era of Through the Fire and Flames was crazy. There's a lot of musical references across all of Guitar Hero, so we can't go into every single one, but a couple of interesting gaming related ones. For instance, if you look at the Kaiju Megadome, you can find an ad for Neversoft in the background. There's also a lot of references to the number 999, which is another reference to Neversoft for some reason. It was like their go-to number for hiding things around. So you might see 999 appear from time to time, like Studio 999. In Guitar Hero World Tour, there's a little reference here to the band Nirvana, where the guitar has the sound Seattle Fuzz. There's also a hairstyle called Seattle's Finest, which is probably a reference to Nirvana once again, with the hairstyle resembling that of Kurt Cobain's. Also, there's a loading screen that'll occasionally say "move away from the mic to breathe," which is a reference to the classic Chocolate Rain song. Okay, now Portal and Portal 2 were both really big staples of the classic Xbox Live, Xbox 360, mid to late 2000s era, whatever you want to call it, because these games were really innovative for its time. There wasn't anything else like this where it was like a first-person puzzle game where you could control your movement and where you were able to go in such a unique way. Now, of course, Portal 1 was notorious for having a ton of Easter eggs. Obviously, there were the secret rooms with all of the writings talking about how the cake was a lie, and, you know, there was someone else who obviously was in the walls trying to escape the portal maze themselves. There were quite a few other Easter eggs in Portal 1. For instance, there was like the turret toilet where you had to flush the toilet, and yeah, some craziness happens. There was a radio secret where you could get an achievement for taking the radio with you and carrying it into the next room. You end up getting a little secret transmission, which is kind of cool. This is kind of a recurring thing in Portal 1. There's a few different radios where you can get secret messages from them. There is a secret room that has an anti-Black Mesa seminar going on, which is really clever because this essentially confirms that the Portal universe takes place in the same universe as the Half-Life universe, which was a little bit of a mystery before. Nobody really knew what Portal was or how or if it was connected, and just having the little nod to Black Mesa was all a lot of the fans really needed to kind of really love the fact that they were like combining these universes. In Chapter 6 of Portal 2, there's a cool reference to Half-Life 2 Episode 2, where you can see this life raft ring here, which is a reference to the Aperture ship Borealis, which is actually seen at the end of Half-Life 2 Episode 2. There's also a secret room that you can access in Chapter 7, which will get you into this little office that has this portrait of Cave Johnson and what we assume is his assistant Caroline. And if you look at it long enough, GLaDOS will even comment on it. And then there is another radio transmission Easter egg, much like how they hid these Easter eggs in Portal 1, where you can get into a little room through a broken window and you get more information about that Ratman's secrets, and you can hear this with the radio transmission, though it's a little hard to make out what it's actually saying. In Call of Duty World at War, if you jumped into certain puddles on the second level of the campaign and like crouched in them long enough, eventually these statues will come out of the ground and they contain a ray gun from the popular Zombies mode, but this technically was the first appearance of the ray gun, and you can use it in the campaign level, which is pretty cool. Yeah, Call of Duty World at War had some really interesting Easter eggs hidden throughout this game. Like, for instance, at the beginning of the first campaign level, there's this Marine here. His name is Private Ryan, and he can be attacked by this soldier, but if you save him, you get an achievement for saving Private Ryan, like the movie. Many of you are familiar with 115 being like a staple in Call of Duty Zombies lore, but the first time 115 actually ever showed up was in a cutscene for the campaign talking about how hot the temperatures in Japan would get during some of the summer months in the Pacific Front. We see 115 show up here, and I think 115 originally served as like just just a general recurring number Easter egg like we've seen in a lot of games before it became solidified with the whole Element 115 aspect of Call of Duty Zombies. The entire sniper level vendetta is very obviously and heavily inspired by the 90s film Enemy at the Gates. I mean, you can see so many visual similarities. It's actually really interesting. Call of Duty World at War was also interesting in the fact that it had these hidden collectibles called death cards, which were kind of like intel, but they're a little harder to find, and they were these special cards that were on rifles in various locations in the campaign, and once you collected them, they would be used as a modifier if you wanted to mix up the campaign experience. And they had like different things like having the enemies be able to do interesting things like come back from the dead or something. I'm honestly surprised death cards never made a return in the future. Then of course, hidden at the end of the credits originally when Call of Duty World at War first came out was the special zombies mode, which ended up becoming the biggest thing in Call of Duty as just like a little side mode that turned into a giant thing. In itself, it's kind of an Easter egg, but there are Easter eggs, of course, within the Easter eggs of zombies. The first map was pretty basic. There were a few little Easter eggs here and there, like writings on the wall. If you stabbed the radio here, it would start playing music, which was pretty cool. It was a simple but very effective Easter egg that opened the gates for a ton of content in the future and a lot more Easter eggs to come. After Call of Duty World at War's release in 2009, there would be 3 Call of Duty World at War DLCs that would release, all that had some interesting Easter eggs, especially because for Call of Duty World at War, this was a big deal, and for Call of Duty as a franchise as a whole, because more zombie maps were being added, and that opened up the huge rabbit hole that is modern day Call of Duty zombie Easter eggs. And it all started back with World at War. So in the first map pack, the big zombie map that came with it was Verrucht, or for Americans, Verrucht. This map took us to the Asylum multiplayer map, but transformed into a zombies level, and there were some really interesting things. Like for instance, if you lay down over here, you can hear like crying, which is really creepy. If you go over to the drill and hold X, you can hear like the sound of some sort of drill revving up. What else was there? There was this room that had all sorts of numbers and scribblings on the wall that would all relate back to various things that would expand the zombie universe even more, which was kind of neat. But my favorite one was over here. If you flush the toilet 3 times, you get a secret song that plays. And it kind of was a banger. It was Lullaby by a Dead Man by Elena Segman. I mean, it slapped and started the trend of music Easter eggs becoming a thing in every Zombies map moving forward. The first Zombies map in World at War, like we talked about, only had a little radio knifing thing, and it wouldn't be until the Black Ops version later on where they would even add like the secret guitar song when you blew up all of the barrels. So this was a big monumental moment in COD Easter egg history. Now, a few months later, after this first map pack came out, we got a second follow-up map pack 2, and this one had people in Japan in Shinonuma. Now, there were a couple of really creepy things hidden in this one, like this dude that's just like hanging out up here. You could knock him down with grenades, and they never put this Easter egg back in a future Call of Duty game. You could never knock him down outside of this Call of Duty, I believe. And when you knocked him down, if you stood over his body, you would just instant die and reset, and the zombies would be like 50, 60 times harder. It was like the curse of this weird Shinonuma character. Also, this map had little radio logs that you could activate and hear into some more detail as to what was going on in the background in this weird zombies Call of Duty universe that was just starting to unfold at the very beginning of everything. Remember, this was before the days of time travel and multiverses. We were just getting characters established here, so little things were interesting. Sprinkled around this map were references to a potential meteor strike. An Element 115 was starting to become a thing, and if you explore things even deeper here, you could find the meteor out of bounds, kind of, like in this area that you wouldn't normally see unless you were looking explicitly for it. And then on top of that, there was this weird radio inside of one of the huts, and if you activated the phone radio thing, it would like ring for a bit, nobody would be there, there'd be some creepy whispering, and then boom, the secret Easter egg song would be activated once again, this time being The One, which certified banger. It was solid.
I have found a delicious tune.
And then finally, as summer was beginning to end in 2009, we got one final map pack for World at War, which brought us Deriza zombies, or Americans would call it Der-Riese. And damn, was there a lot of Easter eggs in this one. Okay, we'll just go through them real quickly. There's these little like radios scattered around that play like audio logs. If you throw a monkey bomb inside of this furnace, it starts screaming and Samantha starts yelling at you. If you shoot a button that's out of bounds with a pack-a-punched weapon, all these teddy bears start floating up, and then they fly around the map, and you have to play like hide and seek, and that's a thing. There's another dude just like hanging out over here out of bounds. There's like a message that's like in the ground that disappears if you look at it long enough. If you run around and you activate the 3 vials that are in random locations, all of a sudden another song starts playing, Beauty of Annihilation, which best song at that time so far out of the zombie songs. Like they just kept getting better and better.
I have found a delicious tune.
There was pictures here that was referencing future zombie maps that were supposed to be in a map pack 4 that never ended up happening, and those maps later would return in Call of Duty Black Ops, but they would be changed dramatically. Occasionally when you were teleporting, some weird things could happen from time to time. I don't know, the moon looked scary. This was an awesome map, and it had a ton of Easter eggs, and I really appreciate World at War to this day for just how much the bar was raised with each DLC pack that came out, as someone who was like jumping on Xbox Live for the first time in this era.
The Borderlands franchise started in 2009 with Borderlands 1. Kind of during the height of the 360 era. So there's a couple of Easter eggs from this game that I remembered from back in the day. Like this waving claptrap that you can find in the mountains in Firestone, or the secret vending machine that sometimes has really good weapons and gear that you can find close to Marcus's shop in New Haven. There also was these QR code posters that would show up all across Pandora, and I remember wondering if the QR code leads to anything. I mean, I never tried it back in the day, but there's actually 5 different QR codes. Now the first one you can find on a postcard, and it says Nick Wilson Ho-Oh. Nick Wilson was an artist on the game, so he put this little Easter egg in, I assume. The second QR code reads Marcus Munitions Inc., unauthorized retailer of everything that goes boom. I guess a little advertisement for Marcus's store. Then another QR code just leads to gearboxsoftware.com, and also there's one that leads to borderlandsthegame.com as well. But there's another one that actually reads Claptrap was here, which obviously is a reference to Claptrap, and I guess he left these behind and he's like, I was here. And Marcus's shop in T-Bone Junction, you can find this little car with like a little man inside. You can actually interact with him and he will say,
"Hey, you see my gun? Hey, you see my gun? Hey, you see my gun?"
In Moxie's establishment, you can find this shelf that has a bunch of little references and figures and hats and stuff like that that reference different things from the Borderlands universe. If you teleport to the underpass in Rust Commons West and then spawn in a car and take it to this spot by this tower and then go behind it, you'll find this death chest that probably was left there on accident, but it'll actually have really decent loot for your first playthrough. Also during the quest line, another piece of the puzzle, you can find this blue hut in New Haven that can be entered, and it has an elevator that'll take you to the basement. In the basement, you'll find the unique weapon, the Rider, which cannot be acquired any other way, and you're only able to access this area during the quest.
One of the biggest and best Easter eggs to come from Grand Theft Auto 4 was probably the Statue of Happiness, which is a play on the Statue of Liberty, but kind of resembles Hillary Clinton. I don't know. She also, instead of having a torch, has a hot coffee, which is likely a reference to the hot coffee controversy from Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, one that, mind you, caused then US Senator Hillary Clinton to launch an FTC investigation into the hot coffee mod. So in a way, this was like Rockstar's little like jab at that whole controversy. There's also a sign that says no hidden content this way, which is a reference in itself actually to an Easter egg from Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. But if you head inside of the Statue of Happiness and you climb up a ladder, you can actually find a beating heart inside of the statue. That's insane. GTA 4 also had a lot of references to other games just that have existed. Like, I mean, there's the TV show Republican Space Rangers, which is a play on Halo, something that would be used again in Grand Theft Auto 5, actually. There's a random pedestrian that resembles Jimmy Hopkins, the character from the Bully game. He does look a little older here. If you go to the amusement park in Broker, there's blue and purple hippo statues. This is a reference to the Manhunt series. And then there's a little reference at the beginning of the mission Clean Getaway. Vlad nearly gets hit by a taxi and shouts the iconic line,
"I'm walking here!"
which is actually a reference to the movie Midnight Cowboy.
I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
Something I didn't know until I looked into this on the GTA fandom wiki. spooky. And next, let's look to Star Wars The Force Unleashed, because there are a couple of interesting Easter eggs here. Like, for instance, in the TIE Fighter factory, you can find a Republic Commandos helmet, a good nod to that game series. In the Empirical, if you go into the research room, you can actually find a hidden number 1138, another reference to George Lucas's movies, where this number gets hidden a lot of the time. It's just here on the wall next to the door. In the Imperial Kashyyyk room, there's a trophy room here, and is that Jar Jar Binks just frozen here? I mean, it could just be any Gungan, I guess, but hey, I like this little homage or Easter egg that they slid in here. Also, while in this video we didn't focus too much on cheat codes and stuff like this game did have a long list of different cheat codes you could type in and unlock some interesting things, which is always neat in a game like this when it's like a single player sword slashing lightsaber type game, because look, all of a sudden you can just max out your force combos or gain the ability to Sith throw anyone. A lot of options out there. Okay, going into Fable 2, there are a lot of Easter eggs across Fable 2, but a lot of them are just references to other forms of media, so we'll go through these a little bit quickly. Like, for instance, if you go to Captain Dread's otherworldly map, you can see it's just a map of Middle Earth from Lord of the Rings, just chilling here. There's a description of a 2-star rated worn closet that kind of looks like the wardrobe from Chronicles of Narnia, and then there's like a little reference text saying it's not a secret portal to a wintry land, it's just a shabby closet. During the quest Treasure Island of Doom, you have to go and visit a place called Lionhead Isle, which is a likely reference to Lionhead Studios, the developers of this game. And also in the middle of the island, the ground kind of resembles the Lionhead logo, I guess. If you're doing the quest line The Archaeologist, there is this artifact in the quest that mentions the number 42, which is a reference to the answer from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. If you look at Victor the Gravekeeper in Shelley Crypt, this is likely a bigger reference to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and maybe the desire to resurrect Lady Grey is a reference to the Bride of Frankenstein. Also, in the Bowerstone Cemetery, there's a gravestone, which is a reference to the movie The Godfather. On this gravestone, it says, "Mo Green, don't you know who I am?" which is a famous line from that movie. Also, there is a drink in this game, like a beer that's brewed, called Optimus Prime, a reference to Transformers, which is very clever. Now, looking at the bigger picture of Fable and Fable 2, if you know who Peter Molyneux is, he has a little bit of a reputation for sometimes overhyping himself, overhyping what projects he's worked on. It's actually insane. And of course, there's an Easter egg just for him in the form of a gravestone as well, with text that says PDM, likely referencing him. And it says, "This is possibly the best gravestone ever and will revolutionize the way we look at final resting places forever." This literally sounds like something he would write himself. So I can only imagine that one really clever developer hid that in there as like a little parody of Peter Molyneux. Peter Molyneux, if he found out, probably liked it and let them keep it in there. Also, Fable 2 had a pretty cool Halo Master Chief crossover where you could get a character armor set that had armor that resembled stuff directly from Halo. If you've seen the movie The Princess Bride, you probably are familiar with the line,
"My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die."
Well, there is a dye in the game called Swarthy Revenge Indigo, and the text on the description of it is pretty funny. "This is indigo dye of the rare Montoya genus. You have crushed its flowers, prepare to die," but spelled like dying colors. Pretty clever. And then occasionally there's dialogue that can be heard of children talking about some weird underwater city called Bioshock, full of creepy little girls, which is likely a reference to the 2007 game Bioshock. There are a couple of interesting things that have popped up from the older Fallout games that were on the Xbox 360. Like in Fallout 3, there's this room that just has a whole lot of plungers in it for some reason. I mean, this isn't the only thing that's come out of Fallout 3. There are other Easter eggs, like the existence of these gnomes that keep popping up in Bethesda games. Also, if you head off the coast of Point Lookout, you can find this mysterious shipwreck called the Ozymandias, which is probably a reference to the phrase Ozymandias, which is like a metaphor for like power deteriorating things. Could be commentary on like the overall socio-economic commentary hidden in Fallout 3, or just like a clever reference to something else. You might have run into the character Harold in the campaign. He's like a tree, I guess. I guess now he's a tree. Nonetheless, this is actually a recurring character who's shown up in the first 2 Fallout games, and it's cool that after Bethesda took over the franchise, they continued this ongoing trend and kept it in Fallout 3. In Fallout New Vegas, there's a lot of references to different movies, like just a ton if you're interested interested in like movie stuff, definitely check out like the Fallout wiki on New Vegas because there's so much. But some interesting ones include like the Fight Club reference where there's a challenge called Destroy Something Not So Beautiful, which is a reference to the Fight Club line. There's this whole like plot line in Fallout New Vegas where Mr. New Vegas himself will talk about sightings of something coming out of Lake Mead and that they're calling it like the Lake Mead Monster, which is a play on like the Loch Ness Monster.
Howdy, folks. It's Mr. New Vegas, and I have a good feeling about all of you listening. I've got news for you. Witnesses report a huge object or creature surfacing in Lake Mead. So far, photos of the so-called Lake Mead Monster are grainy and underexposed.
And then in Old World Blues, there's this trait called Logan's Loophole, which is a reference to the 1976 film Logan's Run, which is a crazy movie. It's like about this society where you get to like live the best life that you could ever imagine until the age of 30, where you then get like sacrificed to be reincarnated. But for whatever reason, when people reach the age they're supposed to be reincarnated, some of them start to run. And it's up to this time cop to go undercover and stop these people. I mean, he's not really a time cop, an age cop. But then when they age him up to like, you know, get him on the inside, he starts being like, wait a second, what does that mean for me? And then, spoiler alert, he runs. It's called Logan's Run. One of my favorite movies from the 70s.
Now, when Gears of War 2 released 2 years later in 2008, they once again added a couple of Easter eggs. The first one being another achievement-related Easter egg that I found. During the campaign, you free the character Baird, and you cannot miss this achievement. This is actually an achievement you will get just for playing through the game. And the achievement is called Free Baird. Now, I believe this is a reference to the song Freebird, which is also often spelled Freebird as one word. Now, if you played Gears of War 2, you might remember the character Trizzy. He was always wearing like a cowboy hat, or a straw hat. I think it's a cowboy hat. But nonetheless, at the start of Chapter 3, Act 1, you're on this like moving vehicle, I don't know, it's like some construction vehicle or something, and while driving, you can shoot 3 cowboy hats, and once you shoot the 3 cowboy hats, you will hear a line from Dizzy confirming that you shot the 3 hats, and then everyone will wear cowboy hats, even you. Now, I actually found conflicting information on how to do this Easter egg. Some say that it has to be on the highest difficulty, but then I also saw other people saying that the hats are only visible on insane difficulty, but they're still there on the other difficulties. You just have to know where they are. So apparently you can still do this Easter egg on any difficulty, as long as you know the pixel perfect locations of these hats. In one of the later acts, I think it's Act 4, you can find this terrace room that has like a bunch of pillars, and one of the pillars has like this stone chest on it, and you can actually shoot this chest and destroy it, and it will reveal a toaster. Now you can hold X on the toaster, and it'll actually slowly start burning and then smoking, and then some burnt toast will pop up. And again, depending on the difficulty, you can have some extra lines here where Dom and Marcus will start chatting about their toast preferences and how they like it crispy.
Who wants toast?
I like them crispy.
I like them crispy on the outside.
Hell yeah!
Also, Marcus says he likes it crispy on the outside. Like, what does that mean? If a toast is crispy, it's just crispy on both sides. Can you make it crispy on one side? What kind of toasters am I missing out on? Furthermore, if you go and beat all of Gears of War 2, at the end of the credits, there's actually a secret message that is actually Marcus Phoenix's dad, Adam Phoenix, talking.
This is Adam Phoenix. Is anyone out there? Can you hear me? This is Adam Phoenix. Can you hear me? What have you done?
Then on the multiplayer map Canals, you can shoot these pillars and the stones will actually come off, and one of them kind of has this face hidden in them. Now, I'm not quite sure if this counts as an Easter egg or if this is intentional, but it's definitely a face. I can kind of see it. It almost looks like an alien or something. And the other pillars also don't have the face in them either, so this could very well be intentional. You might know that the down state in Gears of War is called Downed But Not Out, and there's actually a reference to this on the multiplayer map Day 1, where there's the Downed But Not Out cafe, and there's a gear holding up a bottle on the sign outside the cafe. On the same map, you can also find this trash ball table that plays a bunch of little jingles and some quotes from Coltrane. At the end of Gears of War 1, you have a fight on this train, and there's a little reference on the map Tyro Station, which features a train passing by. If you wait for the first train to pass and then you go shoot this warning sign, when the train comes back you can actually see Marcus Phoenix on top of the train, clinging on for dear life. It is very brief since the train moves kind of fast, so I slowed it down, but I don't know, I think it's kind of funny. Gears is pretty famous for its chainsaw attachment at the front of their guns. There's something called a Retro Lancer though that precedes the current Lancer with the chainsaw that we all know, and people dubbed it the Retro Lancer, and you can actually see it in the Gears of War 2 opening cutscene, where these two soldiers are wielding it, which is the first time you ever got to see it. This is a gun that would later be introduced in Gears of War 3 as a playable and usable weapon, but the first game to tease it was Gears of War 2.
2009 Halo 3 ODST introduced a lot of intrigue into the Halo series. There are a lot of mysteries surrounding this game, but also some Easter eggs hidden along the way. Now, the elephant in the room, of course, are those Halo 3 ODST glyphs. What do they mean? Why are they here everywhere? There's something about them, right? Kind of, yes. There's a big mystery to unpack, and we did a 3-part series a few years ago where I think we looked into every potential detail and came with a pretty solid conclusion as to what they really are about. But essentially, they serve as in-lore markers for where you may have seen engineers that were working with the Covenant, marking where they were searching for signs of the engineer quick to adjust, also known as Virgil, marking places that he had interacted with along the way. But the glyphs do have a larger meaning, connecting to a bigger universe and a bigger design philosophy that Bungie had implemented. If you wanted more details, you should check out those 3 videos that we made on it, because that really just documents the entire journey and research process that we went through. There are a lot of allusions to Dante's Inferno built into Halo 3 ODST as well, and essentially the entire story is, in a sense, a depiction of Dante's descent through the 9 circles of hell, with each circle being represented in Halo 3 ODST in one way or another. And there's some really interesting connections to that as well mentioned there. Now, there are more Easter eggs that are a little bit simpler, more on the nose, and easy to appreciate, where you don't have to have like a literature degree to understand. Like, for instance, we discovered an Easter egg a while back after MCC got the little upgrade where you could look at things closer on the Xbox Series X, where we could finally see this newspaper just clear enough to make out what was on the newspaper, and it says Grunt adopts a baby, and has a picture of a grunt and a baby. It's hard to see, but if you look long enough you can see it, and it's pretty funny. Much like Halo 3, if you load up on the last level, Legendary, 4 players, co-op, Iron Skull on, you will find secret vehicles hidden away. There are 4 mongooses in this tunnel here, and a couple of rocket launchers that have 100 rockets. This is to be used with the Vidmaster Deja Vu achievement, but also is kind of handy to have a rocket with that much ammo. Also in ODST, there's this Marine over here that's just like freaking out about being in a zoo.
Semantics! This whole place is one big cage!
Then also in ODST, if you went over to this corner here on Kikowani Station, you can activate the Secret Siege of Madrigal song, which is in every Halo game, but also you'll see Marty O'Donnell pop up in like a little cutout, just dancing around here. This was taken out of the game when Master Chief Collection released, but if you have the OG Xbox 360 version of ODST, you can still experience it. A few other things that are exclusive to the Xbox 360 version of ODST is that there are posters around saying Destiny Awaits, which was Bungie's little nod to the game that they were already working on, Destiny. And just another interesting thing that was cut out of the MCC version of the game was the graffiti that says "You loot, I shoot." They removed that from the MCC version when the PC release came out. They updated it and removed the graffiti, and you can only see that now on the OG Xbox 360 version, or if you have a down-patched version of MCC. There were some more casual Easter eggs you could do, like for instance, if you went and collected every single audio log during a playthrough, then played through the game, made it to Data Hive, you would find a final audio log where that security guard you meet up with doesn't get killed by the buggers. He'll actually drop down with you, and from there he will take you to a secret room that he opens up, and you can find the finale of the audio log story here. Spoiler alert, he will betray you and try to kill you, but he's kind of weak, so you just kind of wreck him real quick and that's it. But if you went through the process of finding all of the audio logs and got the whole story and you did all this, you will be get greeted with a alternate cutscene when you do meet up with Dare and you head into finding Virgil, the engineer, where Rookie already knows Virgil's story, so he calls Virgil to come out rather than how it normally plays out. On NMPD HQ, when you're up on the rooftops here, if you jump off the roof, you can find some graffiti on the wall here. I'm just chilling, kind of funny. And then also the famous Monkey Man Easter egg does make another appearance in ODST in the final cutscene, where if you hold left on the analog stick, the camera will pan over to Buck looking at one of those Monkey Men things from Halo 3. And also, did you guys know that Rookie might have had a girlfriend? If you play early on in the game and you look up to the left, I think on heroic difficulty, you can see like a little picture and a note thing that you don't see otherwise normally when he's inside of his pod. Even Halo Wars had some interesting stuff going on with it back in the Xbox 360 days, and we're not just talking about like the hidden skulls in the campaign that still were kind of cool secrets, but you know, not as substantial here. There was a Doritos Snack Food Company sweepstakes where the winner would get to voice a character in the game. This guy Nate Beeler ended up winning, and he got to voice one of the Pelican pilots on mission number 5. Also, besides the collectible skulls where you had to do like special challenges to get them, there were hidden black boxes available on every campaign level as well for players to go search out and find, which are pretty cool too. Now, if you played Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, you probably remember a lot of the different Easter eggs that showed up in that game, because there was quite a bit. And of course, we're not going to talk about every single detail like we already did in this super long Call of Duty video, but there are some interesting ones that we want to mention at least here as we do this nostalgia trip through the Xbox Live days. On the multiplayer map Nuketown, if you go over to the telephone on the wall, you can actually see a little reference to Call of Duty 4 here for whatever reason. Also on Terminal, if you look at the flights here, you can see a flight for something that looks like it's Leet Speak from the late 2000s. Similarly, you can see more Leet Speak on the train on Derail. There's a couple of fake video game consoles laying around in various places, like we found the Black Box 6 game system on Skid Row. There's also this system called the Game Station 5 with the game Deer Hunter 17. Now obviously Burger Town made its big debut in Modern Warfare 2, and it's a play on Burger King, like a parody, but there's other restaurants nearby that also were plays on other restaurants that are real too, that just never got as much attention as Burger King and Burger Town initially did. Like for instance, there's this taco place, and it's obviously a play on Taco Bell, but they sell burgers. The same burgers that Burger Town sells. I always think that this is like some big conspiracy theory. Then there's a TGI Fridays looking place here, but it's obviously not TGI Fridays. If you pay close attention to the graffiti in any Infinity Ward game, you'll notice that a lot of the times, in one way or another, the graffiti is a reference to the name of a developer who worked on the game, which is pretty clever. Whether it's like initials or a nickname or something, it's usually something that's hidden around. You can sometimes find developer pictures in certain campaign spots, like for instance, in some of these houses and bank buildings back on the mission Wolverine, you can see like a picture of what we think is a developer with a camel and other pictures of developers. Over on the multiplayer map Favela, if you stab this mirror for whatever reason, you can take a lot of damage or even die. And then of course, my personal favorite Modern Warfare 2 Easter egg is the teddy bears that are just hidden around the game literally everywhere. Like, I mean, we could go on the multiplayer maps and almost every multiplayer map has a teddy bear hidden somewhere. Sometimes multiple teddy bears. The campaign missions are the same way. There's teddy bears everywhere. Obviously, one of the most popular things was the one on High Rise, where if you did this really challenging jump and landed on this hanging scaffolding thing and made your way to the top of the roof, you could find a bunch of teddy bears just laying down here, because it is a secret spot, but an intentional secret spot. There were 2 DLC packs that also released with Modern Warfare 2 after Modern Warfare 2 had been out for a little bit, and they added a couple of little nods and Easter eggs as well. Like there's this pink stuffed mongoose looking thing. There was a giant teddy bear hidden in one of the maps. On the multiplayer map Bailout, there is the sign saying IW for lease, which is a reference to Infinity Ward. You can see this Captain Price graffiti, and there's also these floaty toys kind of hidden around in various places in Modern Warfare 2. I don't know if you've seen them before. They're interesting. Also, on one of the DLC maps, there's this memorial to Zakayev, which is just kind of silly, I think, but neat. Then there was a really cool museum at the end of Modern Warfare 2 where you could like look at all the set pieces from the campaign, but there was a secret button you could press and the set pieces would come to life and try to murder you. Pretty cool Easter egg.
Also, another banger game of the 360 was Batman Arkham Asylum. And with it being a Batman game, there's obviously a ton of Easter eggs and references to various parts of the DC universe. The first one you can find if you enter Harley Quinn's office, where you can see a bunch of newspaper cutouts and pictures of the Joker and even her original costume. costume, or at least parts of the original costume. And if you look closer at some of the newspaper clippings, you can actually see stuff like the Injustice Gang Strikes Again, which played a bigger part in the Justice League comics in like the 70s, so this is like an old school throwback. If you are on your way to Dr. Young's office, you can find this morgue, and one of the corpses will have a little tag on them saying Ra's al Ghul. Now if you actually come back to this area later in the game, the body is gone, meaning, you know, someone took the body, or maybe, you know, Ra's al Ghul woke up, which makes sense because he would play a major part in Batman Arkham City. Also, while obviously not every Batman villain can be in one game, there is still a couple cells that reference different Batman villains from over the years. You can find the cell of Calendar Man, which has a bunch of those little rip-off calendar notes all over the wall in the cell. You can find the cell of Maxi Zeus, who has like a bunch of Greek mythology drawings on the wall. Also a little later on, you're able to find Scarecrow's secret lair. If you've ever seen the weird Batman movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze or Dr. Freeze or whatever, you might remember that George Clooney was the one playing Batman. And there's actually a little reference to this. On one of those LED message boards, you can actually see that one of the doctors is called Dr. Clooney. Another similar reference is made to Cillian Murphy, who played Scarecrow in the Christopher Nolan Batman movies. During one of the interrogation or interview tapes with Scarecrow in the game, he actually mentions a Dr. Murphy. It also references the voice actor that played Scarecrow in the new Batman Adventures, Jeffrey Combs, when they talk about a Dr. Combs as well. Now, actually, when the game released, Rocksteady hid a secret room that would hint at the sequel, Arkham City. Though actually nobody was able to find it, and a year after the game's release, Rocksteady themselves revealed that they had hidden the secret room. In the warden's office, you can blow up one of the walls and it'll lead to the secret room that has blueprints of Arkham City and other little concept art. Damn, this could have been a Rocket Stuff video if this was like some undiscovered stuff that happened nowadays.
Before Bethesda took over with the Wolfenstein IP and had Machine Games work on a few newer Wolfenstein games, Activision had Wolfenstein and had Raven Software working on Wolfenstein, which was just called Wolfenstein back in the day. Some of my favorite ones are just like Raven Software leaving their logo just in the game, like this tavern here called the Raven's Nest Tavern. Let's go ahead and look at 2010's Alan Wake, which was originally an exclusive to the Xbox 360 and had a lot of really interesting things going on. Essentially, a lot of the original Easter eggs were just that, Easter egg references to other games that Remedy Entertainment had worked on. But slowly over time, and as later games under Remedy would release, some of these Easter eggs evolved into plot points, which make it really interesting. Now, if you know anything about Remedy Entertainment, they were originally known for making the first two Max Payne games, and while they don't necessarily own the rights to Max Payne, they hid a lot of Easter eggs originally in Alan Wake referencing this, where they turned Alan Wake into an author of multiple crime novels with a character known as Alex Casey, and even the book art cover resembles the box art for Max Payne 2. So this started out as an Easter egg, but later would evolve into like this multiple universe plot point thing that they're starting to maybe dip their toes into. But yeah, the Max Payne references in Alan Wake 1 are all over the place. They even have the original voice actor who played Max Payne, the now late James McCaffrey, voicing dialogue lines for manuscripts that reference the Alex Casey character.
I'd lain here in the snow while the lurid chain of scenes that had led me here kept playing in my head. A rerun of my own private snuff movie. A memory of my corpse. Alone at my own wake. Thinking in metaphors again.
And then, of course, that character would show up in Alan Wake 2. But Alan Wake had other references to Max Payne as well. There was 2 crossed golden Berettas on display in Alan's apartment. These are the infamous handguns of choice that Max Payne uses. In Episode 2, after you visit Dr. Nelson, you can actually find photos on the wall, which are video game developers from Remedy Entertainment. Also, in Chapter 4, there's actually an Xbox 360 in the room with a Night Springs game on it. However, remastered versions of the game removed the Xbox 360 and switched it with like a generic console, probably because the remaster released on more consoles than the original Xbox 360. There also was a video game poster referencing Death Rally, which was Remedy Entertainment's first ever game. And then, of course, one of the biggest, most recurring themes that have shown up in Alan Wake are the very overt references to the television series Twin Peaks, which served as a massive inspiration for the story and environment that this game would go into. 2010 also marked the release of the last Halo game that would be developed by Bungie, and in turn, Bungie treated Halo Reach as kind of the swan song to Halo overall, which meant there were a ton of Easter eggs and references sprinkled all throughout Halo Reach's campaign and multiplayer. We might not have every single one in this video because we've already done a video on 1,000 Easter eggs in Halo, but we will talk about some of the most notable and iconic ones that you might remember, along with some interesting, mysterious ones you might not have known about. There's of course some of the common popular ones, like on New Alexandria. If you go into the Club Herrera, after activating a secret switch on the rooftop, you can kind of see this little dance party going on, which is pretty chill. It's got a DJ Brute, it has some grunts dancing, kind of a cool little area here. Also, side note, Club Herrera is a reference to Claude Herrera, who was one of the icons in the Bungie community, was like a community leader, so they gave him a little reference here. There's even an alternate switch you can hit to change the song to get another Easter egg song in your club as well. New Alexandria has some other Easter eggs too, besides just little ones like sometimes having the chance of having Buck show up in your mission from Halo 3 ODST and like having to escort him along. There's a series of literal hoops you can fly through and jump through and maneuver through and activate switches with that will allow you to randomly take control of both a Phantom and a Pelican for the first time ever in Halo history. This was a really big deal because for years people have wanted a chance to get to fly these vehicles, and never had there been a Halo game where you actually got to do it. So all of a sudden, for the first time ever, bam, you can try these things out and fly them around for a bit through a little secret Easter egg. If you fly straight forward at the beginning of the level to the building with the yellow-green emblem and fly to the roof, you'll see that there's a bunch of newspapers scattered around here, and they're lined up in the shape of a smiley face. And much like every Halo game so far, you can find a random Marine on New Alexandria who is just like going through it. He is freaking out and he is not doing well.
Strap us up with tanks and have us fighting on their side. Not me, man, I'm out.
Also on New Alexandria, the elevator has a chance to play some interesting elevator jingle music. And some of these songs are actually tracks from early on in composer Marty O'Donnell's career when he used to make jingles for television, just like recreated in elevator music form. We actually were doing a bigger video on a different Halo-related project that'll be coming up soon, and we sat down with Marty O'Donnell for an interview with that, but after we talked about that, we asked him specifically about these jingles for this video. He explained to us that the songs were selected from his old catalog of music that he used to do for corporate videos. And the Easter egg was special because no matter like how much fighting you were doing, the second those doors shut, you were just like taken to a different place with elevator music. Pretty cool info. Thanks, Marty, for helping. Then, of course, there's the massive Easter eggs hidden on the campaign level of the package. There is, first of all, secret banshees that you can gain access to by, once again, doing a series of little steps and switches, and you can fly these banshees around, and that's pretty cool. But once you get deeper into the level, there is a secret switch on legendary difficulty that you can go and hit at the end section, giving you access to a tribute room, which essentially is just Halsey's lab from the cutscene, except you can actually look around and explore. And there are so many little secrets and nods all over in this room. There's the Bungie's plan for world domination. There's references to Red versus Blue. There's references to a lot of other videos that the community has put out, inside jokes. Everything under the sun from Halo's legacy since 2001 is pretty much referenced in some way or another. And that is a really, really cool thing that they hid here. One of the best well-known Xbox 360 Easter egg rooms of all time. Also, while you're in that room, the Siege of Madrigal plays, which is that iconic song once again that has shown up in every single Bungie Halo game, so it felt fitting that they used that song to show up here. Also, on the campaign level sword base, once again, there is some switches that you can do in co-op mode that will activate a little like racing game type where you can race around in like a mongoose with your buddies. I remember finding this one after Rooster Teeth posted a video on it way back in the day, and it was really cool, and it was something that a lot of us probably learned through Rooster Teeth. May they rest in peace. Then, of course, also in every campaign level of Halo Reach, there are these weird enemies known as BOBs, or Bobs. They're a reference to a marathon class from the game series Marathon, but they're like these secret elites that are hidden on every single campaign level, and not a lot of people knew about these back in the day, or they would encounter them and not really know what was going on with them, and slowly over time every single one would be discovered. But there were quite a few of them, and for a long time not many people knew about all of their locations that they're in, because there are some levels in Halo Reach's campaign that don't appear to have any types of elites in them, just brutes, but there are elites secretly in them, in those levels in some way or another, and that was a cool find from the community to like uncover where all the Bob locations were. You can see that this mining company is called BXR Mining, which is a clever reference to the button combo people used to hit in Halo 2 to cancel their reload animation right after their ammo clip was filled. This became like a big meta for Halo 2, where whoever could essentially hit the button combo consistently would get a leg up in any type of firefight in multiplayer mode, and it was kind of a staple of Halo 2 back in the day, so it's cool to see like a little reference to it here. There's also an Easter egg where if you zoom in when not holding a scoped weapon, you can see a line of binary code at the bottom of the screen, and if you actually translate it with ASCII 8-bit binary, the code reads Dave, which is a reference to Bungie's interface designer, David Candland, who was, adding some spice to make it look, tech-coated when you're zoomed in, and decided to kind of hide a little extra secret there and threw his name in there. While we don't really upload shorts on our YouTube channel too much anymore, we did do a short not too long ago where we discovered this weird Easter egg where if you go into this one room early, the room will like reset over time. But when we did this glitch that causes the room to weirdly reset, we noticed that one of the civilians in the room looked oddly familiar, and upon further inspection, it looks like this is Marcus Leto, who had worked on all of the Halo games, just kind of showing up here. There's also speculation that Marcus Leto was used as the inspiration for the Monkey Men in Halo 3 and ODST, so that kind of lines up here too. Also on the Pillar of Autumn, there is this wall here that if you punch it, sometimes an extra supply crate will pop out. I think this wasn't intentional. I think maybe when they were building and designing the map, they might have double layered the supply crate that's normally inside the room, and it clipped through if you punch the wall for whatever reason. But nonetheless, this ended up becoming an Easter egg because now it's just a secret in the level. Also, sometimes you can have like random Marines or ODSTs in your squad with you throughout Halo Reach's campaign, and the names will vary from time to time, but oftentimes it is a reference to either a developer or someone from the Halo community. A lot of the main voice actors who showed up in Red vs. Blue will have their real-life names used as candidates for a potential name to show up to assign for these random Marines. Also, there is a chance when you kill an elite, it will make the sound Herc Blah, which is like a common recurring joke that they did whenever a character dies in Red vs. Blue. And much like Halo 3, the Puma Easter egg from the Warthog is still here as well. And then to wrap up Halo Reach's campaign section, if you are on the Pillar of Autumn wrapping up that level and you complete it, the final cutscene's playing, if you hold right, you can pan your camera over and see Master Chief in cryo just chilling here. Kind of a cool nod to show the significance of what Noble Six's sacrifice was for the greater scope of the Halo universe. Switching over to the multiplayer side of things, there are a few things hidden there that we want to talk about as well. Like for instance, on the map Spire, if you go over to this big anti-air gun without a cannon, the area around it on the HUD will say BFG, which is a reference to Doom and, the BFG in that game. Also, on various multiplayer maps, there are these radios that will play different conversations, and a lot of the time they're just to kind of build up the Halo universe with more lore with what was going on in Halo Reach. But occasionally there are some interesting nods in there as well. There are some references to a conversation about zombie plans from Red vs. Blue, which is also ironic because of the grand scheme of where Halo goes after Halo Reach, with lore-wise them going to the first Halo ring and then they find the Flood.
Alright, so zombies can still hear and stuff, so that makes guns a weapon of last resort, right? Yeah, solid so far, ammo too. Exactly. So I was thinking that, what is a weapon that'll keep them out of grabbing range and won't run out of ammo? A spear.
Also, these radios have the numbers 777 displayed on them, which is Bungie's magic number that shows up everywhere. There are a few interesting Easter eggs hidden in Halo Reach's multiplayer DLC for Combat Evolved Anniversary as well. Like, for instance, on the map Penis, there's a chance that you can catch or see a grunt inside of a barrel falling off of the waterfall here. It's just kind of a little interesting thing that they hid. Also, there are these special dolls that are hidden on all of the DLC maps for Combat Evolved Anniversary called GRD dolls. These are these like little dolls that have this mask or helmet on, which was a planned helmet that was supposed to come to Halo Reach that ended up not being able to make the final cut for the DLC. So they turned it into this little like Easter egg hunt in a doll form instead. And the helmet eventually would become available in the Master Chief Collection years later. Nonetheless, it was a fun little quest line to go and try to find all of the GRD dolls that were hidden. But yeah, pretty cool stuff coming out of Halo Reach. Red Dead Redemption has some funny things happening in some of the cemetery sites. For instance, if you go to Coots Chapel, you can find a gravestone that has the label "A Cowboy Without a Name," which is a reference to Clint Eastwood's Man with No Name. Next time you play Red Dead Redemption, pay attention to the cemetery and grave markers. There's always a lot of little Easter eggs here. There's another thing over by Blackwater Chapel where you can see inscribed here the phrase "Wake me if something interesting happens," which is likely a reference to the Halo series where at the end of Halo 3, Master Chief utters the line "Wake me when you need me." There's also a pretty clever reference to Shawshank Redemption over in this area. If you look in Beecher's Hope, you can find this like lone tree with like a little rock wall and stuff. And this is an homage to the movie Shawshank Redemption, where Morgan Freeman's character Red finds like the secret treasure. Also, sometimes John Marston, if he's attacked by like a wild animal, he'll say something along the lines of "Game over, man, game over," which is a line directly from the movie Aliens. So it's kind of like a double inside joke here. Over in Red Dead Redemption's expansion, Undead Nightmare, there's actually some cool things going on here. Like there's this homage to the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. You can actually see all 4 of the horses: war, pestilence, famine, and death. If you go on and complete all of the Undead Hunter challenges, and you also catch all 4 of these horses, you can actually unlock a straight up unicorn in Undead Nightmare, which is insane. Fable 3 actually has a really clever reference to the Portal games, or at least the first Portal game, where if you head inside of the market area and you find this hideout, you'll find like this little closed off cell and a wooden companion cube and a cake on the bench next to the cell. Multiple references to Portal here. There is a pretty cool Halo reference. There is a 7th demon door, which is named Cartographilia, which is probably a reference to the popular Halo level Silent Cartographer. Even more so, if you look at the sky in that area, the sky resembles Halo's Silent Cartographer pretty closely, except obviously there's not a Halo ring. Instead, there's like this lens thing going on, but still a pretty cool nod to Halo. Over in the area Driftwood, there's actually a reference to Lionhead Studios, the studio that made the Fable games before they got shut down. And if you head left towards the spire and look kind of under the ocean or below the ocean, you can see the logo of Lionhead Studios here, just chilling. Also, first of all, there's a cemetery called Morningwood, which is also a cemetery in Saints Row 2. Very funny joke, guys. But there's a tombstone, and in the tombstone, it says, "Here lies Arnold. He won't be back," which, I mean, that's just pretty clever. It's a reference to Arnold Schwarzenegger's famous one-liner, "I'll be back." It looks like someone over here in the Fable universe might have been a fan of Pac-Man, because we have a cake here and this like whole table situation that much so resembles Pac-Man. Okay, this one I had no idea even existed, but at the beginning of the game, when you go and take the bandit's clothes, you'll hear one character say, "His name's Clarence, but everyone calls him Jimmy," which is a reference to the movie 8 Mile with Eminem, where the character Clarence is Papa Doc's real name and Jimmy is Rabbit's name, you know, Eminem's character's real name in the movie. Totally crazy Easter egg. I love that. If you do the chicken race betting, sometimes there'll be a chicken named the Colonel, which is a reference to Colonel Sanders, you know, the founder of KFC. And then if you go to Brian's back garden, there's these like 3 statues of frogs here, and people have thought that this might be a tribute to a company that Peter Molyneux had started, Bullfrog Productions. It probably is. How could he not hide an Easter egg about himself in here some way or another? 2010 also was a big year because it marked the release of the much anticipated Call of Duty Black Ops. And this time around, Treyarch went completely out there with the Easter eggs that they hid hit in this game. There are so many things that Call of Duty Black Ops had. It would set the pace for Call of Duty games moving forward. One of the most obvious ones and classic ones was when on the main menu of the game, if you press left and right trigger back and forth, you'd be able to break free of the harness and walk around the interrogation room in the campaign that you're normally kept in. You can even access this computer over here and look at the CIA data system, and there's a ton of various things that you can find in here, information about characters, different types of things you can activate. There's also a secret game called Zork, which was like a classic text-based adventure game that is fully programmed into this game that you can experience and like type in the commands and play Zork. Wow. This was definitely one people were talking about for quite some time back in the day. Over on the campaign level numbers, you could get a secret thunder gun, and all you had to do was like destroy some barrels, you interact with a few things, and then you go and hold up a button on the wall here, and boom, you get the thunder gun, which is cool. It's kind of like a clever secret thing hidden here, as World at War had the ray gun hidden. This time around, they hid the thunder gun in Black Ops 1. Much like Call of Duty World at War, the number 115 shows up as an Easter egg multiple times beyond just like the zombies relation. Just simple 115, which was like this number that Treyarch was kind of hiding in their games, and you can see a reference to 115 on Woods' tattoo. Also, when you're playing Search and Destroy in the multiplayer side of things, to plant the bomb, you repeatedly enter the code 115, 115, 115, so on and so forth. Also, if you load up on the multiplayer map Nuketown and you shoot off the heads of all of the mannequins within the first 15 seconds of the game, which can be pretty challenging, the song Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones will begin to play. It's a little tricky, you might need to coordinate with some friends, and the different mannequins can spawn in different locations, but it's worth doing at least once to see what it's like. There's a couple of other interesting things that they put on Nuketown, obviously, like for instance, this population sign goes up and down based on how many people are in the game. There's a double rainbow in the background, which is a reference to like that viral double rainbow video that was around this time. There's the mailboxes, of course, which have the names of different characters from the campaign on them, and there's even a reference to Treyarch on both the street sign and the school bus in the middle of the map as well. There's a pretty cool wanted poster in a couple of different multiplayer maps, specifically one of the DLC maps, but you could see a wanted sign for someone named Raphael Angelini, who was age 14 and he was wanted for poning noobs and apparently being awesome. And then there's like a little tribute that he's loved by the developers at Treyarch and Activision Blizzard, and this was actually a tribute to a young fan who was diagnosed with leukemia, and the family visited Treyarch Studios, and the developers decided to put a little nod to him in there, which is pretty cool. Interestingly enough, if you take a closer look at some of just the random pictures that are in Call of Duty Black Ops, you can find some interesting things, like there's a early version of the map Hotel and the map Stockpile before they were like finalized on just some pictures hanging up on the walls. Also in the campaign level where you are playing as Sergeant Reznov and you're with Dmitry Petrenko after the big betrayal happens and you're making your escape, the theme song from Call of Duty World at War plays, which is a really cool homage to World at War, as this game is the true sequel to World at War. If you load up on the multiplayer map Hazard, there's a couple of interesting references. Like for instance, there is a chocolate bar that can be seen floating in the swimming pool out of bounds, which is a reference to the movie Caddyshack. Also in certain places on the map, there's a chance that a gopher could be seen rising from the ground and then disappearing, another reference to that movie. On the map Crisis and a couple of other maps where there's like bookshelves, you can see a book that is apparently authored by Rick Tuffin, one of the characters from Zombie Mode. Tank Dempsey's name can be found on ammo boxes. Over on Kowloon, if you pay attention to the TV for a couple of seconds, a 5 in a circle will appear on the screen, and then one of the dials on the number will switch to 11, and I think this is another reference to like 115. On the multiplayer map Discovery, there are multiple signs telling players to watch their head with the word Dummkopf written on it, which is German for stupid head, I think. On Zoo, this poster here actually depicts a real Soviet poster from the 1920s, which was dedicated to the first Russian animal trainer Nikolai Pavlovich Gladlishevkov. On the multiplayer map Hotel, if you shoot the slot machines, they'll start spitting out money. Over on the elevator, there's actually a 3-player weight limit, so if 4 players are in the elevator and they try to use it, the doors will simply reopen after closing with a message that the maximum weight limit had been exceeded. Also, the room with the clocks in it is probably a reference to Tony Montana's mansion in Scarface, as the desk has like yellow stripes and there's TVs that act as security cameras. Hangar 18's a wild level, as the player can see like alien carcasses covered with blankets here, and they have like 4 fingers and blue feet and 4 toes sticking out from the blankets. What is going on here? On the like drive-in movie theater level, you can actually see an arcade machine called Call of Duty World at War Uber Shooter that has like the MP40 as like the gun that you would use to shoot. This is the first time World at War appeared as an arcade machine in a game, which is pretty neat. And then of course there were a ton of Easter eggs introduced in the form of zombies. That was with Call of Duty Black Ops 1. Call of Duty Black Ops 1 had some really interesting zombie related Easter eggs. Obviously on Kino der Toten there was the popular one where if you found the 3 rocks of 115 energy scattered around the map, you would play the song 115, which was possibly one of the best songs in zombie history. Also, when you were teleporting to go to the Pack-a-Punch machine, there's a chance that you'll just spawn in like a random room or Samantha's bedroom or something, and you could pick up a film reel in the short time that you're in there, and if you get all the film reels, you can play it on the big screen. It's like a little creepy movie thing here. Also, in this room, there's 4 posters on the wall of the main characters, but who's the 5th poster supposed to be? Over on the zombie map 5, there's a couple of interesting things. If you find the 3 red phones, it'll play Eminem's Won't Back Down featuring Pink, which also a cool song to fight zombies to. Over here, there's a painting on the wall of a World War II soldier. I guess it could be a picture too, or a photograph, not a painting, but World War II soldier, Sergeant Roebuck, one of the main characters from the World at War campaign. Another World at War reference here. Then on Ascension, there were a couple of different Easter eggs here. This was the first game to have like a full-on like quest line Easter egg associated with it, which we were not going to go in depth on every zombies Easter egg because they started to become like a built-in story where you're supposed to go and do these things, but we'll mention them still. Besides the 3 teddy bears that play the song Abracadaver, another great song by Elena Segman, there is a pretty big quest line where you have to do all sorts of steps to activate it. Like you have to like stand in one place and you have to do stuff with the landers, run from one place to the other. Long story short, if you fulfill the long quest line, you do get rewarded with death machines for the whole team for an extended amount of time. Shangri-La had a couple of Easter eggs as well. There's obviously the whole like story Easter egg where you have to do an eclipse and you have to stand on these platforms and you have to do all sorts of things for that one. This one was a pain to do. We did all of the Easter eggs for Black Ops 1 not that long ago for a video we're working on still, so we know the struggle that many of you guys had gone through trying to get this Easter egg completed. On this map, you are looking for the secret meteorites to play the song Paradolia, and then of course on the moon level there's a secret song again, and then there's the whole Easter egg where you're supposed to shoot rockets at the Earth, and there's this weird spaceman dude that might have the name of one of your friends. Pretty cool stuff. Zombies always had cool Easter eggs and stuff built into it, and if you want a more in-depth look at just the Easter eggs of Call of Duty Black Ops, because Black Ops has so much, you should watch our 3-hour video on Call of Duty Easter eggs because that video goes hard. Nonetheless, we have a lot of games to cover besides just Call of Duty, so let's keep the ball rolling. The game Dead Island surprisingly has a lot of Easter eggs hidden in this game. Like, a lot. For instance, the achievements and trophies, I guess, if you're a PlayStation player, reference a ton of various forms of media. Like, one of the achievements is called Gotta Find 'Em All, a reference to Pokemon. Another one called No Raccoons in Here, a reference to Resident Evil. How many days exactly? A reference to 28 days later, especially because you have to get the achievement after playing the game 28 days after starting it. There's Can't Touch This, which is, you know, a reference to the MC Hammer song. There's Tis But a Flesh Wound, a reference to the Black Knight scene from Monty Python and the Holy Grail, again. There's Right for Life, a reference to Left 4 Dead. And honestly, there's just a ton of other references in the achievements alone. Besides the achievements, there's a ton of other little references. There's license plates that read Dead Island, but in Leet speak. You can find the little family, you know, from the trailer that was super viral back in the day, just chilling inside of the hotel. They're fine. There's some guy over here whose name is Ted B, and he's like kneeling in what appears to be a blood-stained pool. I wonder what he's been up to. At every single gas station, the gas prices are set to $6.66. Towards the beginning of the game, there is an Oceanic Flight 1012 that crashes, and then there's like a hatch over at this lifeguard tower. Both of these are references to the TV series Lost. Lost even used the same flight company, Oceanic Airlines, as the name. There's an abandoned house that has the infamous Don't Open Dead Inside sign, which is like, you know, an homage homage to The Walking Dead. In Dead Island Riptide, there's a couple of little interesting things, like for instance, they have a reference to the Borderlands series by having this little Borderlands-inspired zombie come running at you. And later on in the game, you can find this shack that is a little creepy, but it does look like this is potentially like a reference to Jason here, his little shack that he must live in when he's not, you know, doing his Friday the 13th things the rest of the year that he's out. Now, Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary is interesting. This was a 10-year special anniversary of Halo Combat Evolved releasing, and essentially it's the same game, but like new assets put over the old game, and the assets a lot of the time reuse stuff from Halo Reach. It was a little bit of a weird thing, but nonetheless, it did release on the Xbox 360 originally before being included in the Master Chief Collection. And while we're not going to go over every single Easter egg that originally was in Halo Combat Evolved, because we don't want to like double dip, we will be going over some of the new ones that were added specifically for Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary. Like for instance, the bulletin board on the Pillar of Autumn, which was full of little Bungie Easter eggs back in the day, was overhauled for the Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary version to just have some different types of things on here. There's a poster for a movie called Dark Planetoid Rising, which is an Easter egg to the planet Requiem that will start off Halo 4, which would come out after this game came out, so it was like setting up the next big Halo game. There's an advertisement for a performance by a ship's band called Fist of the Unicorn, which spells out to be FOTA, the first 4 letters of FOTUS, which ends up being that unicorn helmet in Halo 4, and there'd be other FOTUS type names that would pop up in various Halo entries down the road. There's a notice for a missing goose. There's a post about a missing cat that was found on the 75th, which obviously I don't think is a cat, but I think it's like also a play on that reference to that Jonesy cat Easter egg that was in the original Combat Evolved that we talked about a little bit earlier in the video. Just a few little interesting things that were changed here. Obviously, Combat Evolved Anniversary went on to do a few other notable things along the way, like they added terminals on multiple different levels. Pretty much I think every level has a terminal now that you can activate, and that was pretty cool. There also were skulls, much like how Halo 3 had skulls hidden throughout the campaign, that were now retroactively added into Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary. So for the first time ever, Halo CE had skulls, and technically you could play Lasso now for Halo CE. But yeah, the skulls are hidden in some pretty tricky places. Some of them are really easy to get. Some of them involve like a little bit of thought. Sometimes you have to like glitch through a wall or do like a crazy insane jump to get to it, but still cool little thing that they added for those treasure hunting Halo players out there. Also on the Pillar of Autumn, where you can normally see like the life status of Master Chief on these computers, you can also see references to another character, Linda, who is like a character from the books and stuff. She was another Spartan that trained with Master Chief, and yeah, they did a little homage or reference to her here. I'm not sure if this counts as its own Easter egg or just a feature of the game, but exclusive to Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary on the Xbox 360 were the special Connect commands, where you could use your Connect to say things like scan, and the game would scan certain pieces of items like weapons and whatnot and give you lore and information about them, which this feature was not ported over when the game came to the Master Chief Collection, so it's kind of a lost feature. Kind of interesting. There also was the command to say grenade, and it would throw a grenade. Pretty useless, but still something that was only in the Xbox 360 version, so if you remember this, bonus points.
Reload. And as you can see there, it just reloaded. Grenade. And it just threw a grenade.
Also, some of you might remember back in the original Combat Evolved, there was an Easter egg on Legendary Difficulty where Sergeant Johnson hugs an elite as the ring is about to blow up. And that elite goes for a little game of grab ass here. However, in Combat Evolved Anniversary, they actually changed the scene so that Sergeant Johnson is the one going for the game of grab ass instead. Kind of a funny little joke Easter egg here.
Now that we get to Gears of War 3, it actually has the most Easter eggs out of any of the Gears of War games so far. Now, Gears of War 2 had the whole, like, putting Dizzy's head on everyone Easter egg, but Gears of War 3 has a similar thing where you can put Dom's beard on everyone. You gotta start the game on insane difficulty once again, and you have to make it through the dream sequence at the Phoenix estate, but you have to stay really close to Dom, and a way to confirm you doing it right is him saying yo to you, and you have to follow him as closely as possible. And if you do it right, after you get out of the dream sequence and you get to the little like hideout base or whatever it is, everyone around you, including yourself, will be wearing Dom's beard until they die apparently. In Act 4, Chapter 1, you can find this helmet sitting on this window, and if you shoot it, you are able to kick down this door over here and find this arcade machine. The arcade game is called Sawed Off Chicken, and if you kick the machine 3 times, it actually boots up and you're able to play this minigame. And this minigame is really trippy actually, and it's actually kind of scary. It's like this black and white effect, and you're kind of wobbling the whole time, and there's monsters coming at you, and you're like in some void. I don't even know. This is like one of the scariest arcade games I've ever seen. Also on the same level, you can start an Easter egg that will give you a special gun called Cluckshot at the end. This is actually a pretty hard one to do because it spans multiple levels, and you have to follow the steps closely while also playing on insane difficulty. Now at the beginning of this level, the first thing to do is to avoid all the ash people and make your way over to this chicken with a pirate head standing on it, and you have to press X on it and the chicken will explode. And then in the next chapter you have to walk up to this car that has this ammo crate on it, and as soon as you walk up and try to pick it up, the car will actually fall down the cliff. And then later in the level there's another ammo box on these railroad tracks hanging off a cliff, and once you try to approach them, the ground shakes and the ammo box will fall once again. And then on chapter 3 you can find an ammo crate stacked on these boxes in the barrel once again, and if you kick it, it'll fall again. But if you did all the steps correctly, the chicken with the pirate head will come up on a flying ammo box and drop off 4 clock shots. And if you're wondering what the clock shot actually is, it is a grenade launcher that shoots exploding chickens. I mean, you get limited ammo for it, and especially if you're doing it on co-op, there's only like a couple shots, but I don't know, it's kind of a funny gun. And just seeing the chicken pilot the ammo crate or whatever, it's like some trippy stuff. You can also find this weapon earlier in the campaign, actually in the first chapter, if you jump over these barriers by this graffiti, and you find this dead soldier, and he'll have like some frags and a clock shot with him. But you don't get as much ammo as you do with the other more convoluted method. But there's actually one more way to get the clock shot as well, and it's also in chapter 1, act 1. You can walk up to these pipes and press X on them, and your character will shout into them. If you do this 4 times, a giant fire-breathing golden chicken will appear and start attacking you. If you beat this chicken on insane difficulty, it'll actually drop another clock shot. On act 2, chapter 4, you can find this hidden cutscene after you take out all the little explosive tickers, and if you walk up to this little window and press X on it, the camera will actually pan up and you'll be able to see that there's some locusts having like a dog fight or chicken fight. If you do the same thing on 4-player co-op, the cutscene will actually be different. Instead of this fighting pit, there'll be now like a factory setting, and something goes wrong and they have like a workplace accident and everything blows up. Going back to act 1, chapter 3, you can find this playground, and if you approach the slide and press X on it, you can actually slide down. And your character will scream like, wow! And also on the same chapter, when you get to the grocery store, you can find a Coltrane hat, and if you walk up to it, you can actually put it on. And there'll even be a prompt if you want to wear it normal or backwards like the cool kids. You can also find it on this truck near the playground. And later on there'll be a cutscene where you actually lose the hat. And in the same grocery store you can find like a bunch of Coltrane merch, like the stand and, you know, some cereal and stuff. You can even interact with the cereal, and some special audio will start playing, and if you do it a couple times, you'll hear like the speech that Cole gives during the Queen stronghold in Gears of War 2. Also, the trash ball tables from Gears of War 2 return, and you can walk up to them and they'll play like Coltrane sounds again. You might have heard the term to two-piece someone, which is like you melee them and then you pull out a shotgun and instantly fire the shotgun to hit them. This is actually something that was really popular in Gears of War, and there's a little reference with these characters, and one asking the other character if they can show them the two-piece again.
Hey, can you show me the two-piece again?
Alright, one last time.
Awesome!
Also, when you meet the character Jace for the first time, he's messing with this vending machine trying to get a chocolate bar. Eventually he'll give up and walk away. But if you walk up as Marcus Phoenix and you press X on it, the character will just kick the machine and the chocolate bar will fall out, and Marcus will be like, well, it's mine now. Then if you remember back to Gears of War 2, you had the War Journal that would kind of track like the collectibles and the achievements in the game. And while they got rid of the feature in Gears of War 3, there's still a little reference to it. When you wake up on Act 1 Chapter 2 and you go over to Marcus's desk, you can find his War Journal on the table. You can't interact with it or anything, but it's just a small little detail and throwback. Then looking at the multiplayer of Gears of War 3, there's actually a bunch of maps that have Easter eggs on them as well. On the map Mercy, if you head to the chapel and you look at this table at the back of the chapel, or actually I think it's technically the front of the chapel, I guess wherever the pastor stands is the front of the chapel, I guess? I don't know. Anyways, you gotta wait here for like a random amount of time, and then the bells will ring and the photo of Dom and Maria will appear. And if you shoot the photo, an audio clip will start playing of Dom crying. Then on Gridlock you can find this boarded off area, but if you shoot one of the Ashen people, it reveals that they're having a pig roast back there. And you can even shoot the handle and it'll spin the pig. Now this map has another Easter egg that you can only do if you don't shoot any of the Ashen people, but if you manage to finish a map without destroying any Ashen people, when the next round starts, the song Mad World from the original Gears of War teaser will start playing in the background, like an instrumental version. It's that one song that goes like, all around me are familiar faces, worn out places, worn out faces, or something. I don't know, I'm not good at singing. But we can't play it in this video because we'll get copyrighted, so you'll have to take my rendition of it. Then the map Checkout, which is the map set in a supermarket. You can get this dancing wretch to appear by following specific steps. First, you gotta pull this fire alarm, which opens this door that will give you access to a fire extinguisher. Then you gotta find another fire alarm that is actually on fire. How's the fire alarm on fire? It's like the only thing that's on fire. That's actually crazy. Which will make this shopping cart roll in with a red hat. Then you gotta shoot the red hat. Then after destroying the red hat here in the shopping cart, it will reappear in this window, so you gotta go over there and shoot it again. This will make this car explode and be on fire, but there's also this scythe that appears in this mannequin's hand, and you gotta put out the car fire, which will make the scythe disappear and reappear in the bathroom. You gotta find the scythe on the ceiling, shoot it until it recedes into the ceiling. Then you head back to the door that you opened at the very beginning of these steps, and there's this radio on fire, and you gotta extinguish the fire once again. And then after a few seconds, the smoke will disappear, and you will see this dancing wretch that has the scythe and the red hat, and he'll just be throwing ass. The DLC map The Slap actually has another audio Easter egg you can trigger by moving these balls you can find in the back courtyard into the hole in this fence where like this guy got executed or something. And once you do that, this creepy laugh will start playing. If you load up on the map Bullet Marsh and shoot these generators to turn off the lights, some swords will eventually spawn. It's kind of RNG, and you have to get the swords to spawn like 4 times, which will then down all players, and there will be a special animation of Ram reviving you. And you will have a one-handed Vulcan, which is like a special weapon that you can't usually acquire, and it will have like a ton of ammo in it.
Next up, we have to take a look at Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, at least a little bit, because there are some interesting things in this game. Now, this game was originally developed by Infinity Ward at the beginning. However, half of the development studio left during development, so a lot of the development slack would be picked up by Sledgehammer Games, who hadn't worked on their own Call of Duty game just yet. So interesting, but still, there's some hidden things in here that definitely are worth looking into. Like, for instance, there's this store, the Trabe store. Trabe store? It looks like an Apple store. It's a parody of the Apple store. On the multiplayer map Village, there's this hatch over here, and if you look at the hatch, it has the numbers on it from Lost, which is a direct reference to the TV show Lost, where they discover a hatch on the island that has those Lost numbers on it. Also, if you look at the candy stands that are in a couple of places in this game, you can see Abalo bars, which are a play on Apollo bars, which were the candy from the Lost universe, so it's like a little parody here as well. If you go over here, you can see this arcade cabinet that looks like it might be referencing Call of Duty Modern Warfare. I mean, it's obviously referencing Call of Duty Modern Warfare. If you play the Spec Ops level, the pit, where you go through like the little shooting range like they have in all Modern Warfare games, and you turn around, you can actually see a picture of General Shepard from Modern Warfare 2, except he has a knife on it, because you know in Modern Warfare 2 you hit him with a knife there. Of course, it wouldn't be a Modern Warfare game if there weren't a bunch of teddy bears just hidden literally everywhere in this game as well. Just look at this. Look at all the teddy bears that we're showing. Some of the DLC maps have even more references than any other Call of Duty game in single maps. Like, there's all of these shirts that have meme dogs on it, all other types of references. There's all these arcades on this map with references to old Activision games. If you play on the stock exchange area in the multiplayer, you can see over here there's these scrolling names of different stock options, and you can see Activision, Blizzard, and Sledgehammer Games referenced here. In the campaign, when you're in France, there's this like graffiti drawing of a little girl with a sledgehammer. A lot of people thought this was a Zombies reference. I don't think that's the case. I think this is more of a reference to Sledgehammer Games here, and as they were working on their first Call of Duty game, it makes sense for them to hide some things for their own studio here as well. When we were working on our big Easter egg video for Call of Duty, we spent a ton of time looking for something called the Goat Path pervert Easter egg, and it took us forever, but eventually we found it here on this DLC map, and I still don't really know what I'm looking at this point. On Hard Hat, there's a secret reference to one of the developers who went by the name Ned, and if you look inside of this building and you look just the right way, it appears to be a ballerina grizzly bear, but everything has to line up just right to actually see it. A little spooky because Wise is here, but also really cool to have something secret here. There's this area by this outpost that has a symbol that says Infinite States of Ward Control Tower. Also, you can find a secret dancing chicken over on this Overwatch tower. If you're playing on the multiplayer map Sanctuary and you listen very carefully, you can hear some creepy sounds in certain places, like sounds from that one level where like London gets attacked. Kind of spooky. There are a ton of Easter eggs hidden in the train systems map here. Just different places that I guess you could travel to in London, like These Nuts Avenue. And then over here, if you go into spectate mode and you fly up to this window, you can find another teddy bear Easter egg, a giant teddy bear to be exact, that has dual-wheeled gold desert eagles, because why not? And on the multiplayer map Lockdown, you can see this thing that says So Intense and has rainbow spray. It's a reference once again to the Double Rainbow video, because he says that the rainbow is so intense. Pretty clever. If you play Battlefield 3, you might have come across this interesting memorial here on Wake Island. It's just like an homage to the fact that Wake Island's appeared in so many Battlefield games. It's like a thank you to the players. Also, if you've played on the Battlefield 3 map Epicenter, it was a part of the Aftermath DLC, you can find the helmet from Isaac Clarke from the Dead Space series, or Dead Space 2 specifically, on the shelves in this small room over here. There's even some little like sound effects that go with it. Over on the map Danya Fortress, another DLC map, there's a small model of the Normandy SR2 from the Mass Effect series chilling here. Then also on that Aftermath map that we talked about, if you take a helicopter over to a building near the C marker on Conquest mode, you can find running shoes here on this building. This is probably a reference to Faith Connor from the Mirror's Edge series. And then apparently there's a chance that on the map Nebanon Flats, there's a pterodactyl that can occasionally spawn in and you can see it fly by.
Here is the screenshot right here. Look at that pretty beast. Look at it. Oh my god, Das.
This isn't the only Battlefield game that has some clever references back in the Xbox 360 era. If you played Battlefield Bad Company 2 and you're like paying close attention to some of the little like radio chatter that happens in the background that a lot of the time your brain just kind of turns off, you don't pay attention to, you could hear one of the like people on the radio saying, "Find a bad guy, I'll get you ice cream for dinner." Also on the mission Cold War, you can see another little Mirror's Edge reference here in the background. There's a picture of someone. Pretty sure it's Faith again. There's some other little like clever jabs, you know, making fun of heartbeat monitors from the Modern Warfare 2 series and whatnot.
He'll just send some special ops douchebags with heartbeat monitors on their guns instead of us.
Also, there's a sandcastle that first appeared in Battlefield 1943 that was brought back for Battlefield Bad Company 2. Now, some of you may remember the 2011 game Rage, and some of you might remember that in the TV show Breaking Bad, Jesse plays Rage, but with a light gun? Yeah, I don't know what's going on here. But in the game itself, if you go to the shelf in Sheriff Black's office, you can find Tuco's grill from Breaking Bad, which is a reference to Hank keeping the grill as like a trophy. This Easter egg actually has another little layer to it when you realize that the voice actor who voices Gabe is Matt Jones, who voiced Badger on Breaking Bad. Also in Rage, if you head to the abandoned distillery, you can find this graffiti room that has a ton of references to the developers at id Software who worked on this game. Pretty cool. There are also a ton of references to Doom literally all over the place in this game, so if you're a big Doom fan and you like Easter eggs, this might be a game to spend more time on. Also, on Mayor Clayton's desk, you can find the bobblehead of the Vault Boy from the Fallout series, which is neat. And on the quest Defibrillator Upgrade, there is this little reference to Duke Nukem here with the woman that gets captured by the aliens. And there's also two references to Lost hidden away in this game as well. In Wasted Garage's second floor, there's a street sign that has the numbers from Lost, 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42. Also in that dev graffiti room we talked about earlier, you can find signage for Not Penny's Boat, a reference to the Not Penny's Boat scene from Lost. lost. Also hidden away in Rage with a couple of steps you have to go through, there are Easter eggs with secret rooms that reference Wolfenstein, Quake, and Doom. I wanted to talk about Forza Motorsport 4 real quick. This game came out in 2011 originally, and while later games would have Halo Warthog crossovers where you could drive the Warthog around, this was still before the time that fully came into fruition, but they did hide some Halo stuff way back in Forza 4, where once you unlocked 19 unlocked cars from the challenges, you would gain access to the Warthog, where you can at least like look up all of the fun facts and see it in the garage and whatnot. Also in Saints Row 3, there are some interesting Easter egg references to wrestling. Like there's the emote Nature Boy and Woo Scream, reference to Ric Flair, the Marine, a reference to John Cena, Angel Mania, a reference to Hulk Hogan, and Cutthroat, a reference to Chris Benoit. If you go to any container ship, you can find this like little penguin at the back of the ship that's been impaled. Yeah. There's a few clever references to that number 31 in Saints Row the Third as well. The code for the elevator and party time is 3131.
Code's 3131. Just watch the jacket.
There's that whole like text adventure mission in Dragons and Tears, and there's like this whole little section that mentions praying to the 31 gods of Diaz. There's also like this background event going on called Murder Brawl 31, which kind of like a reference like I guess the Super Bowl, but 31 numbers here. Also, Saints Row 3, while not having as many awesome Easter eggs as Saints Row 2, does have a couple interesting things hidden around Kinsey's warehouse crib. It's worth taking a look at if you're just like playing the game and you want to look at some stuff closer. Like for instance, there's a newspaper clipping of a hidden bunny in the ocean, which is a reference to that giant rabbit that we saw in Saints Row 2. Well, it turns out this was referenced again in Saints Row the Third, where if you go to this specific shipping dock area, you climb on there, you can see that this giant ship has the rabbit on it, covered in net, like they finally caught it and found it and brought it here. Yeah, I don't know. Really interesting though. I love this. I love that they kind of kept a little bit of continuity with an Easter egg across two games. Okay, then do you guys remember the infamous or famous keyboard cat videos from back in the day? Well, here in one of the cribs, you can actually see a computer playing keyboard Gat, like the character Johnny Gat, but he's a cat playing the keyboard. Very cool, Volition. I see you.
Now, Batman Arkham City was actually the game I got when I got my 360 for Christmas, so that game is near and dear to my heart, and it has a lot of cool Easter eggs in it as well. If you pull out your cryptographic sequencer and you hold down all the triggers and all the bumpers and rotate the left thumbstick to the left and the right thumbstick to the right, eventually you will activate Big Head mode, which gives everyone in the game big heads, including Batman or any enemies he encounters. I think it's funny, and I mean, Big Head mode is one of those classic Easter eggs that has been in a lot of different games over the years, so it was cool to see it in Batman Arkham City as well. Also, you can find another of Scarecrow's secret layers if you hack this hatch on a boat, and if you go down there you'll see like a couple things, like a bunch of insect habitats or something like that, and also a dead guy on a chair. You can have a brief encounter with Killer Croc, that's a little Easter egg, and I remember finding this one when I played this game when it came out, and I was so confused, because you have this whole dialogue with him and then he never shows up in the story again, so I guess I didn't realize this was an Easter egg back then. But nonetheless, you throw your Batarang at this button and then this cutscene will start playing.
You are not welcome here.
I'm not here to fight you, Croc. Let me pass.
Your scent is different. I smell death on you. I don't need to fight you, Batman. I just need to wait, and then I will feed on your corpse.
Also, if you beat the game, you can go back to Joker's funhouse and find a pregnancy test that is positive in Joker's old office. During the end credits, Harley Quinn is singing a lullaby, so all this hints at Harley Quinn being pregnant.
Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna kill for you the whole damn world.
But then if you play through the DLC Harley Quinn's Revenge, you can actually find a bunch of negative pregnancy tests. So I don't know, is she pregnant or not? I guess they left it open. At the beginning, when you're playing as Bruce Wayne and you're being led through like the intake of the prison, you can actually see 3 different Batman characters. You can see Black Mask trying to fight back against some guards early on. Then you will also have a brief encounter with Deadshot. And also if you look at the rooftops after you fight the first set of inmates, you can see Azrael just just standing there and observing everything. Also in the museum gladiator pit, you can find this room that has a puddle in it. And in the reflection, you can see like the skyline of a city. Now, you know, people have speculated what this is, if this is the next location or if it's Metropolis. But I think it's just Gotham and might even be like a texture that is just there on accident. But nonetheless, a lot of people considered this an Easter egg back in the day. Also using the cryptographic sequencer, you can search a bunch of radio waves that will have secret messages when decoded. Now these are decoded by a very basic cipher where AS1, BS2, CS3 and so on and so forth. And if you decode the numbers, you can get these messages. You will pay for what you have done to me. I will return, Batman. And fear will tear Gotham City to shreds. The last one is actually decoded using the keyword Scarecrow, so this one might hint at Scarecrow's plans. There's actually another Easter egg that went undiscovered for 3 years after the game's release. And it was hinted at by some random YouTube channel, and people speculate that was Rocksteady who did this. But anyways, if you change your internal clock on whatever you're playing on to December 13th, 2004, which is when Rocksteady was founded, and then you visit Calendarman, he'll have some special dialogue.
Do you remember my early work? Flawed, but it showed promise. Just like you. As your skills improved, I perfected mine. Starting with seasons and moving through the weeks, I became stronger. My work more elaborate. Days were the secret, Batman. And the end of days is coming. I was there at your beginning, and I will be there at your end.
So Duke Nukem Forever was a game that finally released in the Xbox 360 era after so many years in development, and along the way there were a lot of Easter eggs sprinkled throughout this game, and references, and a ton of other things. We obviously can't include all of them, but here are the ones that we found most interesting. Duke's password for the turret is 1138, which is a common Easter egg in all of George Lucas's movies, so to see it pop up here is kind of clever. In Las Vegas, there's a soldier that's like complaining about how he had to help find his friend's wife, which is like making fun of one of the main plot points of Gears of War 1.
I just got back from helping my friend find his wife. Christ, what a
They do a play on Halo here where Duke is offered power armor, but he does not want it, which is like kind of making fun of the Halo series.
Duke, we've got your green power armor over here and ready to go.
Power armor is for
Well, okay, you want a gun instead?
There's also the whole part where Duke is with Dylan and this other soldier named Jenkins, and Jenkins runs ahead and ends up getting killed, and you can hear Duke say, "Damn it, Leroy," which is a reference to that infamous World of Warcraft video from back in the day. When you're in Duke's Titty City, there's a couple interesting references here, like in the employees only room where the security camera is. There's a top here that's spinning forever, a reference to the movie Inception. On Dam Top, there's a really clever reference to GoldenEye for the Nintendo 64, or the movie, I guess, where Duke dives off the top of the dam. We did talk about the Master Chief homage in Duke Nukem Forever, but there are a couple of other helmets as well. There's this one referencing Dead Space, and also this one, which is a Psycho referencing the Borderlands series. Let's go ahead and shift gears now to 2012, the final year of Xbox 360 being like the main console that Microsoft had put out, because the next year the Xbox One would release. So Call of Duty Black Ops 2 was kind of the last Call of Duty game of this era before like the era of transitioning into the next gen would begin. Black Ops 2 definitely had a lot of really awesome things about it, and I think a lot of people look back at Call of Duty Black Ops 2 very fondly to this day. Some of you might remember there was a really cool alternate extended ending if you had like the good ending of the game where, I don't know, like Woods is just rocking out. But about 5 minutes into the performance, you can actually see a zombie in the rafters on the left side of the screen. If you're playing on the multiplayer side of things and you go to the orange house in Nuketown, you head upstairs, you can see that there are these like mini figurines of the old Nuketown, which is kind of cool because the old Nuketown was one specific iconic design, and this is obviously the new, different Nuketown. Still to see a nod to where Nuketown originally came from. Also, on the multiplayer map Hijacked, if you go upstairs, you can find a book here written by Edward Richtofen, much like the ones we saw in Black Ops 1. And then over on the multiplayer map Express, you can see these movie posters on the tunnel here, and they're titled Hijacked, Meltdown, and Yemen, which are all maps from Call of Duty Black Ops 2, just kind of showing up here. There's a little nod. On the multiplayer map Cargo, you can see that a lot of the containers that are used for like shipping things have the text 3ARC on them, which is a reference to Treyarch, obviously. Also on Hijacked, if you look at the sides of the boat, you can see the words Bon Voyage, which is a reference to David Vonderhaar, who, you know, obviously his nickname is like Von here, and they made a play on the word Bon Voyage. But still, kind of a cool little thing that they hid here. If you're playing on the multiplayer map Raid, if you look in the distance from the pool area, you can actually see the multiplayer map Aftermath way out there. However, if you're playing on Aftermath and you look out of the map, you can't see the mansion from Raid. It's like a one-way Easter egg. Then over on the DLC multiplayer map Studio, you can actually see that there are some little props used that are kind of interesting, like dual-wield ray guns, sliquifiers, and the Vector K10, along with the ray gun Mark II, of course. This level also has references to Godzilla and has like a miniature city section here. And on the map Encore, you can see a lot of London landmarks around the map, but also the drums on stage will make noise if you like knife it or shoot them. On the multiplayer map Cove, in the distance you can see a yacht that looks a lot like the yacht from the map Hijacked, and there's a couple of Castaway Easter eggs on this level as well. There's like a makeshift raft, help is written in the sand with coconuts. Some good stuff. Now, of course, Call of Duty Black Ops 2 was also notoriously known for its zombies mode, and there's a lot to unpack with zombies, so we're just gonna go through it really, really quickly to not like waste all of your time. In the tunnel on Transit, there's a green highway sign that's hanging from the roof and has a few letters blacked out. The letters that you do have left say "Day X over to me," which I think means like day crosses over to me. In the diner area, the signs that are still lit up say "Now Die" and "On for You." There is a music Easter egg hidden in this zombies map as well. By finding 3 different teddy bears, you'll be able to activate the song for this one. Then of course there is an Easter egg that is tied to the main Easter egg quest a little bit, where you go through a field and you can find the original bunker from Call of Duty World at War zombies mode, the first zombies map, and it's just kind of like recreated here briefly, and you can take a look here while you're doing your Easter egg stuff. Over on the zombie map Die Rise, there is some little Easter egg stuff on here as well. Like for instance, PhD Flopper can't be accessed on this level, though it would have been very helpful. They kind of play on this by having it visible from an elevator corridor, but it ends up remaining inaccessible. Once again, there is another song hidden in this map, which you can activate by finding 3 teddy bears scattered around the map. There is a whole Easter egg quest, much like Transit here, and multiple ways to end it, where Black Ops 2 did this thing where most of the zombie maps have 2 different ways you can conclude the Easter egg. But yeah, we're not going to go into details on all of those because those are more like quest steps rather than Easter eggs. On Mob of the Dead, at the beginning of the match, if the player stands still and doesn't revive their character, if they just chill and bleed out and not resurrect themselves in the afterlife, the song Samantha's Lullaby can be heard. There is a little jump scare that appears if you have a sniper rifle and you're looking at the fireworks on the prison roof. Then there's a number pad over here that has a couple of different Easter eggs that you can do with it. If you put the numbers 935 in it, it'll activate "Where Are We Going?" And if you input 115 in it, you can hear the enemy zombie thing Brutus say "Not this time," or maybe "Next time." And then he changes the numbers to 666. If you find 3 whiskey bottles around the map, the song Rusty Cage by Johnny Cash will play. And much like how Die Rise teased us with PhD Flopper, this time on an inaccessible dock, we can see PhD Flopper and Mule Kick, both being unavailable through here, though you can get those perks elsewhere in the cell block. Then if you look over to the clock in the cafeteria, it's listed as 115, which is 115. On Buried, there's 3 teddy bears again that you can activate to try to get music to play. If you get a ballistic knife and you go inside of the saloon and shoot a bullseye with it, the piano behind the player will start to play all by itself. A little spooky, but also kind of cool. If the player goes through the mansion again to leave the maze, a ghost can be seen playing the piano, and then you can tip the ghost 10 points and he'll give the player a random perk. And then over on Origins, there are radios scattered around on this map. If you hold them down, you'll get the song Shepherd of Fire. There is another jump scare here where if you zoom in on the burning church, you'll get a picture of a skull and a scream, kind of like what you had in Mob of the Dead. 2012 brought the release of Halo 4, which would be a massive release for Xbox and Xbox 360, and there were some Easter eggs hidden in this game as well. Now, Halo 4, interestingly enough, though, didn't have nearly as many Easter eggs as other Halo games, so this section won't be as long as some of the other Halo sections, but still, it's worth mentioning some of the things that were hidden in here. Like, for instance, on the first level, you can actually find a limited edition of Halo 4 in Halo 4, just kind of like chilling over here. I don't know, that's neat. In the Spartan Ops mode, which was like the replacement to Firefight, there were some secret radios hidden in every chapter, and if you activated them, you would hear some red versus blue dialogue with Rooster Teeth collaborating for this Easter egg. It was kind of cool.
What does this button do? Caboose, don't touch anything. But I'm great at buttons. Look at that explosion!
I'm having Dalton drop some extra gear for you now.
6 crates of elbow grease and headlight fluid inbound now.
Hey Simmons, what do you think this machine does? How would I know? It's a 40-foot seamless monolith with one massive holographic button. It could be anything from a giant microwave oven to a weapon with enough power. Hey, is that Caboose? Who started? Probably. He's on fire.
If you play the level Shutdown, there's a couple of little Marine Easter eggs hidden in this early section. There's these Marines that are guarding these crates here. One of them is voiced by Conan O'Brien, and they'll have an interesting conversation.
This is a pretty sweet union we're in.
It's fantastic.
Stand near the crates, but don't ever move them.
Right. Right. And if anybody even looks at the crates, that's a violation.
Oh, yeah.
Also, this one is exclusive to the Xbox 360 version of the game, but apparently if you fight through waves and waves of friendly Marines in the beginning of Shutdown, like you betray them and you just start taking them all out, eventually a Marine will spawn in that apparently is Sergeant Johnson. This one's been debated a bit. I think there was maybe some leftover model and it just, for whatever reason, triggers here, and maybe it wasn't intentional, but yeah, I don't know if this counts as an Easter egg. It doesn't happen in the Master Chief Collection though, but it does happen in the Xbox 360 version, so hey, another reason to keep your Halo 4 handy for the 360. Throughout Dishonored, there's like a loudspeaker that constantly blares out propaganda about different things that have happened over the course of the story so far, and how you play through the story will affect how some of the dialogue is spoken. But in the 5th level of the game, you can actually find the announcer and kill him, and from there they find a new person to announce some of the happenings, and the new person voicing the announcements is the late and legendary Carrie Fisher.
Please prepare for a temporary disruption in city government services. Remain alert for further details.
You might remember there's a section where you can explore the hideout of the Whalers gang, and there's like some initiates trying to learn the art of stealth and whatnot. And there's some dialogue here that lines up with the tutorial mission from Thief the Dark Project.
For your next trial, you must move unseen. Stay in shadow.
You must learn how to move unseen. Stay in the shadows.
A cool nod to the Thief games, because Dishonored at the time was kind of like the natural evolution of what the old Thief games were. Not the, you know, bad Xbox One, PS4 Thief game.
When Borderlands 2 came out, they definitely stepped up their Easter egg game, and also stepped up their parodying or, you know, making little references to other games or pop culture things. Like this blue screen of death that you can find, which reads, "So, hate to be the bearer of bad news, but your system's pretty hosed. Maybe if you download less of that illegal Truxian corn, your machine wouldn't be all jacked up. You should probably be embarrassed. If this is the first time you're seeing this, then it's only because no one else caught you yet. Tell you what's gonna happen here. You're going to put the new graphics SIC card in me and scrap SIC, that gunk, off my keyboard. And then maybe your search history won't accidentally be mailed to your grandma. You picking up what I'm laying down? I mean, that's why you use incognito mode. Also, if you travel east in the Caustic Cavern, you can find a small island. It's actually a little hard to get to because you have to have a decent amount of health and shields to get through the toxic water. But if you make it, you can find this campfire with a sword in it, and you can find this lonesome guy called Solitaire, which is a reference to Dark Souls. Solitaire being a play on, I guess, Solaire of Astora, which if you never played Dark Souls is the Brace the Sun guy. I mean, you've probably seen this guy even if you have never played Dark Souls. Also, when you reach the island, you'll unlock the challenge I Bet I Can Make It, which is a challenge you can only do by finding this Easter egg. An achievement that's actually tied to an Easter egg is called What Does It Mean, which will unlock if you reach this cliff in the highlands. A double rainbow will appear.
Oh! Perfect double rainbow all the way. What does this mean?
which obviously is a reference to that viral YouTube video from 2010, where the guy is like seeing the double rainbow and then he's like, what does this mean? Also, before the game release, during the promotional phase at PAX East, they were doing like this Easter egg hunt in real life, where the winner would be able to pick an Easter egg that was put into the game. The person who got that ability decided to put this NPC in called Johnny Waffles, but as far as I can tell, there's no backstory behind the name Johnny Waffle. Maybe it's just a funny name, but the NPC himself is an Easter egg. Also, if you beat the game a second time on True Vault Hunter mode, which is like the New Game Plus mode in Borderlands 2, after a certain amount of story progression, if you head to Claptrap's place, you can find some gear in his fireplace called Geary's Unbreakable Gear, and the item description reads, only a brisk walk to the Iridium Bright will reward the courier. Now, this is actually a hint what you have to do to activate this Easter egg. You have to walk there. You cannot fast travel, you cannot die, you just have to get there in one life. And this is kind of a long walk, so you'll have to be careful to not die or get run over by enemies. Now, once you get to your destination, this psycho will appear called Geary, and he'll actually start walking towards the cliff and then jump into the lava. This is obviously a reference to Gollum jumping into the volcano in Lord of the Rings. After he actually jumps into the lava, a bunch of boxes will be dropped off, and they have like really decent gear, but you can also farm this Geary guy for unique hats for each character. Also, a lot of people might remember this one, but there's a Minecraft Easter egg in Borderlands as well. You can find the entrance to a cave that's blocked off by Minecraft dirt, and if you start punching it, you'll actually be able to get inside the cave. Now, once in the cave, there'll actually be creepers attacking you, and you get to shoot them. And there's even a creeper mini-boss. There's also ore blocks in this cave you can break. There's a coal ore, which will drop ammunition, then the gold ore will drop money, and the iridium ore, which is unique to Borderlands, will drop either iridium or a Minecraft-themed skin for your character. Also, there's multiple QR codes hidden in Borderlands 2 again. The first one will decode to the message Nick Wilson Ho-Oh, which is the same thing you could find in Borderlands 1. Then the second one will read, thank you so much for playing our game, now I'm rich with love and money, Nick Wilson. Ditto. So Nick Wilson hit himself a couple times again in this game. And the third QR code will actually decode to wise men say, forgiveness is divine, but never pay full price for late pizza, Captain Picard. Which obviously, if you've ever seen Star Trek, is one of his famous lines. Also, you can find Roland's Facebook on multiple screens throughout the game, which first of all reveals that he had a relationship with Lilith, and also you can see Mordecai and Brick as his Facebook friends. Also in the bay near Main Street Reservoir, you can shoot these 5 barrels, and Patricia will once again pop up and be riding a fish. If you're specifically playing on console, you can type in the Konami code during the main menu, and this will add an extra option under gameplay settings called extra wubs. But I mean, the description literally reads, this does nothing, sorry. So I guess this does nothing.
Far Cry 3 had some clever Easter eggs. Besides things like an Assassin's Creed reference here and there's some funny moments like this seasick pirate who's having a rough time. When you're looting, there's a chance that you can get a ripped teddy bear item, and in the description, it references a torn label reading Bo B, which is a reference to the Simpsons character Mr. Burns' childhood bear, Bobo, if you've seen the Simpsons episode Rosebud. Also, if you try to set Far Cry 3 to the hardest difficulty, the master difficulty, the little text description says worse than malaria, which is a reference of the malaria mechanic from Far Cry 2, which was not really that popular of a mechanic. And then there's a clever reference to Call of Duty Modern Warfare, where in the mission Fly South, Willis says that he has plans to leave Rock Island and join up with Task Force 141.
Jason, I haven't heard from you in a while. Thought you were leaving the island.
Nope, I'm staying here.
Not me. This Russia operation's blown wide open. I'm joining Task Force 141 flying out tonight. It was nice working with you.
Which is obviously the Modern Warfare task force. Do you remember that cool level in Saints Row 4 where you like go back into the 60s and then you get like the dubstep gun and things get a little wild? There is a clever homage in this level though when you walk down the stairs where it says Leave It to the Saints, which is a reference to the TV series based in the 60s called Leave It to Beaver. I remember vaguely watching a couple of reruns of the show back in the day when I was younger, and then that weird like late 90s, early 2000s adaptation that was a weird movie. For some reason, I have that memory stuck in my head. Also, once again, in Saints Row 4, there are more references to the number 31 popping up in a couple of different instances. We learned that virtual steel port is known as Simulation 31.
Wear your fealty, and I will empower you to be wardens of Simulation 31. You will have one purpose: torment the President of the United States.
There's a scene where Shondi's talking about driving down the freeway with Matt Miller on the roof of the car, going 131 miles an hour.
Who would have thought, eh? You and me fighting side by side.
Certainly not me.
But it's good. Your brawn and my brains, your sass and my good looks.
Like a buddy cop show.
The one where the pissed off ex-gang member gets a dog for a partner, so she straps it to the roof of the cop car and drives down the freeway at 131 miles per hour?
That's not a real show.
Zinyak even refers to the player as Special Prisoner 31, so we see more of these little references popping up.
All soldiers on high alert. Special Prisoner 31 has escaped and is moving through the base. This is a kill order. Repeat, kill order.
Much like in the other Saints Row games, there's also a couple of inflatable toys you might find in Saints Row 4 in one way or another. Also, Saints Row 4 has a developer room that is pretty cool. It's a little secret area you can look around in, and that's neat. If you shoot off the developers' heads, some fireworks will go off inside of the basement, which is funny. And now, possibly the biggest game that released on the Xbox 360, or at least one of the biggest releases of all time, Grand Theft Auto 5. It's crazy to think that this game released in 2013. A lot of us know that if you go to the water in the very first level of the game, there's this frozen alien that you can see there, and it's kind of creepy. It's one of those big ones that were such a big deal back when this game first came out. Bigfoot is like this mystery across Los Santos and the larger San Andreas area, and in one instance in the campaign, you can actually find him, and it's some dude in a suit, but then the other instance of him is potentially real. Like, we might have a real encounter with Bigfoot here, which is kind of crazy. You can find a character that highly resembles Master Chief at the Walk of Fame, though he seems a little bit scuffed, to tell you the truth. If you head to the northernmost point of the map and go underwater quite a bit, you can find this, what appears to be a sunken UFO, which is wild. If you're playing on the story mode of GTA 5 and you head to Sonora National Park and you look at this rock here, you can see a poem that might be written by a serial killer. And then, of course, if you head to the very top of Mount Gordo at night between 11 and 12, you could see a creepy but ghostly apparition of Jock Cranley's wife, which is super spooky. If you go inside a gas station, you can look at some of the magazines and they can be a little wild. Like, this gas station has a magazine called Alien Prober 3 and it says, "Watch your back." There's even this anime magazine. If you pull up your phone and you dial 948-555-0100, the dial-up modem sound can randomly be heard. This would actually be the number you would call for ZIT in GTA 4, where the same thing could happen. Also, if you go see a movie, you may notice that some of the locations in the movies and the character models are taken directly from Grand Theft Auto 4 and Red Dead Redemption, Rockstar's other franchise. Also, in Sandy Shores, you can go to this bar and there's references literally everywhere. Some of these can be found in other places, but if you're trying to see all of them in just like one place, this is a great location to go because they're just all over the place here. You can see this poster for a lost dog, which I'm pretty sure is a wolf. Someone made a whole ad about a dog that they found just to reveal that the dog's dead. Someone else lost a turtle. I'm not really too sure what this ad is supposed to mean. And it's also concerning that someone out there is missing their lost chicken. We can only hope that they can find it. There's this ad for exotic dancing lessons. Someone needs a roommate who apparently needs to be a female and a vegan. If you look over here, you can actually see a newspaper, and on the front of the newspaper, it's Johnny Klebitz, who's the main character from GTA 4, The Lost and the Damned, but also is that minor character at the beginning of the GTA 5 campaign on Trevor's side of things. Then there's this little piece of paper that says Narwhal Bacon, which is like a saying on Reddit from like 10 years ago. It was like a clever inside joke back then. Now it's a little dated, but still it's interesting to see it here. Then there's this poster to fix your accent, this one for a lost cat, and for all of you out there who need a new job, there's a job opportunity here. If you go inside the bar, you can see a picture of a guy doing something with a tire. Behind the counter, there are these $69 bills with a picture from Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, which is a really clever reference here. There's a picture of this guy from the Altruist camp. Then you can see Nico Bellic in a tow truck, but this is interesting because this tow truck was only featured in the Lost and the Damned expansion, and you can't play as Nico in the Lost and the Damned, so this is like some rare picture. Okay, so this next one's kind of weird. I was driving down Eclipse Boulevard in single player campaign, and I noticed there was like a crowd of people over by the hardcore comic store. I decided to stop and see what it was, and there was a ton of people surrounding a superhero? I don't know. It's apparently the character Impotent Rage, but I think it's just a guy in a suit cosplaying as the character or something, but he didn't seem too happy about it. He was pretty miserable, actually.
Going mad here. Give me a player. Right, I'm calling the cops.
because I've got I want to be doing Shakespeare and I'm stuck doing this crap.
Also, there's a lot of other stores that you can sometimes come across that have very interesting names or brands that are plays on other brands. You could probably name a ton just by thinking about Grand Theft Auto, but there were some more interesting ones that I just wanted to point out as well. This one was Fruit of the Vine Merchants, which obviously is a play on the real-world brand Fruit of the Loom. I also found this advertisement for what appears to be the in-world version of an iPhone, which now is the iFruit 9iX. So we know that the brand is getting up there in models. Either way, this one was 3% thinner, 3% faster, and a 30-hour queue. If you go outside of the Weasel Dorset Theater, there's actually this writing on the wall that says no crying zone. One of the most popular stores that you can't actually go into but would be like a main store if you could go into it in downtown Los Santos is the Anna Rex store. Also, while I'm at it, I wanted to point out that the logo for the Wenger Institute is a little interesting, to say the least. I don't know what they were going for with this W design, but yeah. Okay, so some of you may be familiar with the E-Cola soda drink that's all over the place. They also do the Sprunk Sprite type of play on soda for Sprite, but the E-Cola one is actually really clever, and I never really thought about it until just now. But yeah, first of all, the drink is E-Cola, which sounds like E. coli, but then they took things a step further and added the motto of it being deliciously infectious, which is clever because E. coli can cause like a bacterial infection, or it is a bacterial infection. I don't really remember too much from biology. Nonetheless, it's funny that this is like the Coca-Cola soda equivalent in the Grand Theft Auto universe. Also, while I was examining some other locations, I found a store that gave us a little bit more information about some of the weird things we've seen earlier on, like the Halo knockoff is actually a series called Republican Space Rangers, which sounds amazing. And remember that anime character that we saw at the gas station earlier? Well, we see a better and clearer advertisement for that called Princess Robot Bubblegum. In the single player campaign, you can take the submersible deep down in the water to a certain area, and you can actually find this strange underwater hatch, which is a reference to the TV show Lost. If you do manage to get close enough, you can hear some knocking, which in Morse code apparently translates to, "Hey, you never call, how'd you fancy going bowling?" which is a reference to one of the greatest characters in Grand Theft Auto history, GTA 4's Roman Bellic. If you go to Power Street and you head to the lower level, there's a ton of graffiti on the wall back here, but if you look over on the left, you can see this Los Santos spray paint, which is actually mirrored in the style of the original Grand Theft Auto logo from when the franchise first started. You can get this outfit that actually resembles Tommy from Grand Theft Auto Vice City. On Vespucci Beach, you can actually find some towels that say I Heart VC, which is likely a reference to Vice City as well. Does anyone else remember the character BJ Smith? He was actually a minor character in Grand Theft Auto Vice City, but there's a few locations named after him across San Andreas, like this rec center. If you go to the mask store at Vespucci Beach, one of the masks resembles Pigsy from Manhunt, another game that had been developed by Rockstar, and in GTA Online they added even more skins that are references to other Manhunt looking characters. Occasionally when you're driving on the freeway, you may see signs leading to the Elysian Field Freeway, and this is actually a really subtle but clever reference to another Rockstar title, LA Noire. In LA Noire, there is a company known as Elysian Fields Development, so the fact that we get an Elysian Fields here as well is pretty cool. There's a TV commercial that you can watch for Up and Atom Burger, which is a burger shop you can find in Los Santos, probably inspired by In-N-Out Burger, but the TV commercials themselves actually use images from the game LA Noire as well. During the mission, the Polito Score, Michael will actually mention that his very first score was a heist on the outskirts of Carcer City in 1988. This is a reference to Manhunt, as Manhunt takes place in Carcer City. Over at the Suburban Shop, Michael can buy an outfit similar to the one Max Payne wears in Max Payne 3. If you look at the boat, the Dignity, it actually is almost an exact replica to the same boat present in the mission Suntan Oil, Stale Margaritas, and Greed from Max Payne 3. There's two different cafes across Los Santos named Cafe Redemption, which may be a reference to Red Dead Redemption. In the campaign, on the level where you take Jimmy to ride bikes at the beach, you can find a guy working at the bike rental shop, and if you look closely at the shirt he's wearing, it's a reference to John Marston, the character from Red Dead, and he's also featured in Red Dead Redemption 2. You can find this ring cleaning shop called Supersonic, and it's funny because their whole color scheme is blue and they have have a ring, a very clear reference to Sonic the Hedgehog, but in a simple and subtle way. If you go all the way out to Blaine County, there's this diner that has a giant purple dinosaur. Surely that can't be a reference to Barney the dinosaur, could it? If you go inside of Lester's house, there's a book called Surveillance on the bookshelf, and if you look at the front cover of it, there's a picture of CJ from Grand Theft Auto San Andreas on it. Franklin has an interesting book in his house as well, a Red Dead Redemption based book. If you head over to the Richmond neighborhood, you can find this giant mansion, which is supposed to be inspired by the real world Playboy mansion, and if you look at these two side by side, yeah, it looks pretty similar. It seems like Rockstar Games really loved hiding a couple of Back to the Future references across all of Grand Theft Auto 5. For instance, in Lester's house, there's an 88 miles per hour sticker. All electric boxes in Grand Theft Auto have a notice saying 1.21 GW, which stands for 1.21 gigawatts. And then if you head over to the cemetery, you can find the little chapel in the front is named Hill Valley Church, which is Marty's hometown from the movies. This one's maybe not as much of an Easter egg, but something that was really clever and on the nose. But in the campaign, and also you can find it around GTA Online, there is an Aston Martin that you can drive, and it's called a JB007. And on the Deep Inside mission, you even get to drive this vehicle and use some of the trap contraptions that are known from the older James Bond films. It's actually really clever. If you head up to the Mount Chiliad State Wilderness, you can find this small dirt road that leads to a clearing that has 4 cars, and then there's these dead bodies around the cars, and even a briefcase containing $25,000 at the bottom of the hill past the cars. This is all a reference to the movie No Country for Old Men. If you head into Vinewood, you can find the Vinewood Walk of Fame, where all of these stars with celebrities from the Grand Theft Auto universe will be located. Now, there's a lot of characters that show up and have their names from Grand Theft Auto 5 and even older Grand Theft Auto games, and it's pretty cool to see a little reference and homage to them here. But one interesting one that definitely stands out, of course, is Mad Dog, who did in fact get his own star on the Walk of Fame, who is a main character in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. That's actually not the only time you'll see Mad Dog referenced across Grand Theft Auto 5. There's a few other places where his music is referenced, and it's kind of cool to see what some of these characters might be up to all these years later. There's also references to a band called Love Fist, which was a band that had been featured in other games like Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Did you ever notice that some of like the lawn care type vehicles are manufactured by a brand called Jack Sheep? It's an obvious parody of the real world brand John Deere. There's this company for liposuction called Fat Losers Liposuction with the motto, "We'll make you half the person you were." There's Germinator Plants and Gardens with this little logo plant that says "I'll be Bark," and it has like sunglasses as if it's from the Terminator movies. If you're in Vespucci Beach and you head over to this little restaurant called Shark Bites, you can see that on the menu there's something called "Ain't Much Room Left." I didn't know what that meant at first, but then I realized it's a play on the phrase "ain't got much room left." Get it? Ain't much room left? No? Okay. Also, there's some other interesting things at some of these booths in that same area. Like, for instance, this jewelry store might not actually be a jewelry store. I don't know, I just have that hunch. When I went to the bike shop, I noticed that the person working at the bike counter isn't always just sitting in the chair. Sometimes he's just standing in the ground. Down the road, there's this restaurant called Nutbuster where you can hit the nuts. And then after finding all of these, we decided to set our attention maybe downtown to find some other interesting nuanced things. There's a billboard poster for a legal team, Hammerstein and Faust, and it seems like they really may know employment law well. You'll never need to work again. Your boss is a thief, a bully, and a crook, and he expects you to work. That's like slavery. Also, there's this location that exists. I found this laser printing store that was interestingly closed down, and there was a sign on the front of it that's essentially saying that they can't guarantee their employees' salaries this month. Good luck explaining that to labor and industries. Maybe they should hit up Hammerstein and Faust, since they seem to know employment law so well. There's this meat house called Spit Roasters. We found a movie poster for the film Die Already 4, probably a reference reference to the Die Hard movie series. And then there's the Grand Theft Auto in-universe version of Ripley's Believe It or Not, those like museum novelty type locations, but in this universe it's called Bishop WTF. They seem to have some interesting attractions though on the windows, which kind of make me wish we could go in there. You know the candy bar Ego Chasers, or health bar Ego Chasers? Did you know they have apparently 20,000 calories in one of those? That's insane. Also, while we're talking about interesting brands we've seen in the Grand Theft Auto universe, there's this one that might be EDP's, and this one that might be Howie Mandel's brand. We also found this little restaurant shop, it seemed interestingly enough, and they seem to offer a fried chocolate bar burger that may or may not contain meat. I don't know what that is. And then also, Hoodaman, this Shoodaman. Okay.
Now, Gears of War Judgement is another Gears game that released on the 360, and I don't know, it kind of wasn't my favorite at all. I think it's probably the reason I stopped playing Gears. But my opinion aside, there's still some fun little Easter eggs. Like, during the Aftermath campaign, you get to this walkway on the outside, and there's this long shot you can pick up. If you aim at this crane, you see like this little like enemy figures, you know, kind of waving at you, and if you shoot it, a Reaver will appear and write a message for you in the sky.
You don't see that every day.
During Sophia's Testament, you can spot the sign on the left saying Carmine Family Life Insurance, protect the ones you love, which is an obvious reference to the Carmine family that had multiple characters from the family play a part throughout the Gears of War games. On the mission straight to the top, there's a little Star Wars reference. When you go up the stairs and you meet this human survivor, he asks like,
"Hey, who are you? Who are you?" That's a boring conversation anyway.
Which this was a boring conversation anyways is a quote from Han Solo when they're invading the Death Star and Han Solo is like on the talking pad talking to some officer or something, and the officer is like, "Who are you? What's your call sign?" And then Han Solo shoots like the panel where the microphone is on and he's like, "That was a boring conversation anyways." Now Gears 2 had the whole cowboy hat Easter egg, and then Gears 3 had the whole beard thing, and Judgment has something similar, but this time you put buckets with smiley faces on enemies' heads. You gotta shoot these 3 buckets, and then once you get to the roof of this level, all the enemies will be wearing buckets with smiley faces drawn on them. Also, when you're shooting the 3 buckets, if you go to the last bucket and you keep shooting it, eventually the face will actually change into a troll face. You remember this scene from Gears of War 1 where Marcus is telling Bear to turn off the damn music? Well, you can actually activate an Easter egg that plays the same music in Gears of War Judgment. All you have to do is press this button and then kill all the enemies and the music will start playing. Now if you actually destroy the radio, Cole will actually comment on it and be like, "Marcus would be proud."
No more radio. Marcus would be proud.
Also, you can find this bottle that has the Epic Games 20-year anniversary logo on it, which is obviously the original Gears of War developer. Also, when you interact with this vending machine of Sarah water, your squad will have like a little conversation.
Too bad I'm not thirsty. That does look refreshing.
Are you shitting me? It's empty anyway.
Now in the multiplayer there's a handful of Easter eggs, not too many. One minor one is on the multiplayer map Rig. You can find this box with gas mask on it and you can actually equip the gas mask and you'll wear it until you die. You can also keep re-equipping the mask even though there's nothing there, but you can just keep putting it on every time you go there. Now the multiplayer lab library actually has this boss fight Easter egg that's pretty sick. It involves a couple steps you have to do. First you have to find this bookcase in the back of the library. You have to have 2 frag grenades and you have to toss them up here and this painting will fall down. Now there's a piece of paper in front of the painting and you gotta shoot it with the pistol and this cock above it will start lighting up. Now there's 8 lights on it and you have to find 8 different pieces of paper, or 7 after you found the first one. They're all hidden around the map by different paintings and you have to shoot them all with the pistol until it fully lights up. Then you go back to the first painting and you shoot the first painting and this ghost will come out of it and kind of start reading a book. Now if you shoot it again, you actually get teleported to this boss room and you have to fight this ghost, who has a random weapon each time. Now the boss actually kept noob-tubing me and I kept dying, but you can go back and just shoot the painting again and you can restart the boss fight as long as you're in the same match. I eventually just gave up on the boss fight because I kept dying. I don't know, it was too hard. But then I look up tutorials and the guy just kills him quickly, so I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
Okay, so the Fable series also has had a urban legend of some creature known as the Sand Goose. Ever since the first Fable game, fans had wondered if this creature was actually in any of the games. Nonetheless, the creature hasn't shown up. But in Fable Anniversary, which released on the Xbox 360, it was like the 10-year anniversary remaster of the game, there is a clever reference to the Sand Goose on one of the loading screens, and apparently, finally, at the very bottom area of the map in the desert continent of Aurora, you can see the lost Sand Goose. And while we were unsure whether or not to include this game, Destiny 1 released in 2014, which was after the Xbox One and PS4 released, but a lot of people picked it up for the Xbox 360 originally. And there were a couple of clever Easter eggs, like the building that looks like Master Chief. They obviously can't do like a full-on Halo Easter egg here because they were no longer associated with Microsoft and Halo, but they put something clever here. There were these like 7 coins hidden around the tower, which were a part of like Bungie's big secret number with the number 7. There was also a little jukebox Easter egg where it would play like various songs associated with Destiny, but there was a remix of Siege of Madrigal, which was like that Bungie song that had appeared in every Halo game, and it even appeared in Myth before Halo.
When Borderlands The Pre-Sequel released, they still filled it with a ton of pop culture references and Easter eggs. Once again, the QR codes return, and there's 2 this time. The first one decodes to Nick Wilson, and the second one decodes to Ho-Oh. So this time the whole Nick Wilson Ho-Oh message is just split up. During the final mission of the game, you can find a bunch of elevators. If you take the right elevator, it will lead you to this straight up Mario Brothers inspired area. A bunch of enemies will spawn, and if you take them all out, you'll be rewarded with some loot. If you're in Moxie's bar and you look at the DJs, they're very clearly inspired by Daft Punk. In Serenity's Waste, you can also find a secret boss called Ivajira, which is a similar sounding name to Gojira, which is obviously the Japanese name of Godzilla, and the boss himself actually resembles Godzilla as well. If you played NBA Jam back in the day, you might remember the on fire mechanic, which is actually something you can activate in Borderlands 2. During the side quest Boom Shakalaka, you get to slam dunk a ball, and if you do it, you'll be on fire. Also, if you pick up the quest Kill Mag, you have to eventually fight a Thresher in a trash compactor, and this is a reference to the Family Guy Star Wars episodes actually, where Mag is like the monster in the trash compactor. Also, there's a reference to Jesse Pinkman from Breaking Bad, where if you play as Claptrap during the mission Let's Build a Robot Army, he will say, Also, before Borderlands The Pre-Sequel was even announced, there was a little Easter egg hinting at this game in the trailer for Tales from the Borderlands. You can see this poster of Handsome Jack in front of the Hyperion station, and he's holding like the moon in between his fingers, if it's like small, because he's like far away. And this was in December of 2013, so 5 months before the Pre-Sequel was even officially announced. Also, while I'm on the topic of Tales from the Borderlands, it is also revealed that the fish that Patricia rides during those 2 Easter eggs is called Splurgold, the Flesh Slayer. It is described as 50 meters long and 4 meters thick, and also having awful breath.
And yeah, that pretty much wraps it up for this whole video. If you enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe so you get more videos like this. We've been kind of doing a lot of these long form videos that can kind of fill your time while you're, I don't know, doing stuff. You need something good to watch, here you go. So subscribe for more. You can also check out our Call of Duty Easter eggs video, because there's so many in Call of Duty alone, or just check out some of the other stuff we put out. Huge thank you to our patrons. You're cool, and we'll see you guys next time with a new video.